Welcome, 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 one and all, to yet another episode of WhickTV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And today, we're going to be discussing U.S. military aid to Israel. Given the events of the recent weeks, with Israel declaring war on Hamas and going into Gaza, both with aerial bombardment as well as a ground invasion, um, and all that entails. Is it responsible for the U.S. to continue to give military aid to Israel as we have done? Currently, we give about $3.8 billion in foreign military aid to Israel, the highest of any other country, Egypt being a close second. Um, is this wise? Is this responsible? What culpability does America have for any war crimes that Israel may commit because we fund them? We're going to discuss all this and more. We have one more guest, hopefully, that will be joining us soon. But in the meantime, let's start with the ones we got here. Just introduce yourselves, give I stress, concise opening thoughts, and we'll get right into it. And we're going to start with first-time guest on my show, 𝕵𝖔𝖎. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm arguing for the continuation of US aid to Israel. I support a two-state solution. I want a free and democratic Palestine and a free and democratic Israel. I think US support would be a diplomatic nightmare, and it's not the answer. And while I disagree with what Israel is doing, I think it's up to the US and the West to sort of guide Israel's hand towards a less confrontational and more peace-oriented direction.
Okay. Thanks for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Non-smoker, what are your thoughts?
Hey everyone, twitch.tv/non-smoker, non_smoker. Yeah, I am 100% against any funding going to Israel, other than perhaps humanitarian aid, which is the only aid that we send to Gaza. I happen to think that it's probably the single biggest contributor in this, latest onslaught on Gaza, and for that matter, the outbreak of the continued, I don't want to say outbreak, continued proliferation of violence in the whole region. We are a force for evil in the world, generally speaking. We're basically a giant weapons factory, and we create wars everywhere we go because of that, and we need to stop that as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. Lactoid, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm Lactoid TV. Unlike my counterpart here, the USA is actually, I believe the USA is actually a force for good, and I think Israel is simply a arm of America, realistically here. I would like the funding to be more about loans than direct aid, just given the standard of living in Israel. And I think these loans should probably have a few more strings attached. My understanding is right now only 74% of the military aid that we give to Israel has to be spent on U.S. equipment. I think that should be 100%. But ultimately, they're a close ally and the only democracy in the Middle East, and that area is better off under the control of Israel and America than the little, monarchies or tyrannies that exist otherwise. So it's a good idea.
Okay, thanks for being here. We'll see as we go. And last for now, but certainly not least, another first-time guest of the show, Mono. Please go ahead.
Hey, my name is Mono. I've lived, or Monokuro, however you want. I've lived in Israel my entire life. I'm an Israeli citizen. This is a bit more complicated for me, and my answer will probably not be as precise as everyone else's. But for now, at least until I know that there's like an alternative that doesn't destabilize the entire situation in the Middle East and between Israel and Gaza and the terror organizations, which I will need to hear in depth. I will remain for now in favor of the U.S. Giving funds, and I'll expand on that later.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll get into it as we go. I was hoping that by the time we would get to her turn, Vivian would be here, but she is not here. I'm going to DM her again. But as I do so, I just like to open up the discussion. If you have thoughts or questions, feel free to chime in. And yeah, if you have trouble getting in, please keep your hand raised. Let me see if we can get her in real quick.
I'll just flail like wildly.
Okay, flail wildly. Do whatever you can. Okay. But with that, the floor is open. Go ahead, Scots.
So, non-smoker, what do you think the consequences would be if the US stopped funding Israel?
Well,
Like,
I mean,
directly.
what do I think the consequences would be? It's an interesting question. I mean, it's interesting that you support a two-state solution because I feel like there would probably need to be a diplomatic resolution. There'd be a lot of pressure on Israel to establish some sort of diplomatic resolution between them and the Palestinian people to ensure a decrease in violence. Why would there be any motivation to do that now when Israel receives billions of dollars every year in weapons assistance to fight people who are, essentially like poorly trained and poorly armed? There's no incentive on the part of Israel to reach any solution when they can just enforce their view on the region with might makes right kind of approach.
Sure, but is the US not in a better position to push them towards a more diplomatic end if they're providing funding?
I don't think the U.S. should be overseeing any diplomatic resolution there, especially considering the fact that we've already tried that numerous times and it's failed every single time, because we really are not, despite being a world power and all that stuff, we're a hyper aggressive world power, and we've by no means have some sort of proven track record or demonstrated a precedent where we can establish frameworks for peace anywhere in the world. We establish frameworks that always end up in wars.
I mean, I don't know if that's entirely true. Like, if you look at Bosnia, for example, I think the US has been able to do this with military before, but in terms of just supplying aid to Israel, wouldn't that just allow, wouldn't stopping the aid just allow another power, say, I don't know, China, from coming in and then giving them support?
Do you feel like the Balkans? I mean, obviously there's not a war going on there, but do you feel like there's lasting peace there?
No, because we kind of fucked up the administration of Bosnia and Kosovo after we left. We didn't ever leave, I guess, is part of the problem. But I think that there is a solution to be worked towards diplomatically.
Oh, I
I
agree
would
with
rather,
that.
I would rather,
think
I still think it was worth.
us overseeing a diplomatic resolution, in other words, becomes something where we have the country that we like or countries we like, we have the countries we don't like, and we attempt to broker some sort of peace that ultimately favors us and isn't necessarily fitted for the reality of the situation on the ground. And that's why a lot of these things just bubble over into conflicts.
Yeah, definitely. It could go wrong, but I'm saying is that it could go right as well. The former Yugoslavia, apart from basically Kosovo, things are more or less fine there, and Serbia, but that's a whole different fucking issue.
I guess
I don't know. Yeah.
We're gonna have someone jump in to help you out, non-smoker. I'm sorry, I don't know where Vivian is, but I'll just say this. To bans, can you give us, other than so the example you gave with Bosnia, right? You realize it's a little bit of a fraught example because again, it's not very peaceful right now. There are things. Do you have a maybe better example of how the U.S. military aid or military intervention or involvement has remarkably or substantively improved the world as a whole?
Somalia?
Somalia. Elaborate.
Yeah, so I feel like it was worthwhile going into Somalia to help. I feel like they did manage to overwhelmingly decrease the number of pirate attacks, but it's not really like how it is in Israel. It's a totally different issue.
Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Korea is a better example. Korea, Japan, Germany. These are countries that the U.S. And I think Japan has a lot of you can make a lot of comparisons between what we did in Japan and what Israel should probably do in Gaza. But I guess that's kind of a broader conversation.
It's different though, because the support that we gave the Japanese after the Second World War was for infrastructure, economic development. It's not military aid. We've given more military aid to Israel by several times than any other country. The next closest country is the former South Vietnam. We've given, adjusted for inflation, over $300 billion to Israel in military aid since the end of the Second World War. Like,
there's definitely a difference in scope, but I mean, but Korea, I guess, is the best example I can think of in terms of U.S. military, and especially UN military aid that made the world a better place compared North Korea to South Korea.
But dude, there's a constant, inches away, like a nuclear conflict there. And not to mention the Korean War killed like 20% of the fucking population in Korea. It was a disaster. I mean, like, it probably ended, it ended as well as a horrible thing could have possibly ended. I'll give that to you. But I don't think that's because of U.S. military support. If anything, U.S. military intervention there created a war that was probably avoidable and unnecessary.
That's no. So you have North Korea attack the South, completely invade, and then push it all. I'm sure you believe that, and push it all the way down to like the little corner in the bottom right. And then America comes in, like, cock swinging as we do, and we kick their ass all the way back up to the current DMZ.
Do you know why?
And the South Koreans and the South Koreans now under U.S. influence have turned, like, go ask any Korean. I mean, and if you can even talk to North Korean, which place is better? Yeah, sure. Wealthier, more freedoms, more democracy, just like Israel compared to Palestine.
Wait, rewind the tape, though. Why is there a South Korea and a North Korea? Do you know?
So, I mean, if we want to be like get into the weeds, there's because of U.S. influence and Soviet influence during the Cold War. It was split between the two.
Yeah, like, do you know how they drew up the boundary line?
I don't know the specifics as to where they put the old line. I know the current line is not the initial line that they drew.
Yeah, it's not actually a major difference, but the old line literally was a bunch of people in the State Department just drawing a fucking line through the peninsula.
It's parallel.
Like,
if
it's
that's
not,
what the Soviets would agree with, that's what we had to do.
It's just imperial. No, it was shocking the Soviets agreed to that. It was actually shocking to the North Koreans. It was viewed as somewhat of a betrayal. But, Kim Il-sung, and whatever you think of the Kims and North Korea in general, in my view, and I think in the view of the Korean people, they were the rightful inheritors of the Korean Peninsula because they fought for the Korean independence in the Second World War.
I don't want this. Stop. I don't want this to devolve into a Korea debate. I understand why we're talking about that, but I want to roll it back to Israel, Palestine, Gaza, all that, right?
Can I jump in real quick and ask a non-smoker a question?
Please. And then I wanna get our friend Tiberius to weigh in as well, because Tiberius is filling in for Vivian today. So
that's a weird
Tiberius.
day, ain't it?
What's up?
It's good to see you. Go ahead and ask your question.
So yeah, Smoker, you said that you're in favor of the US stopping the funding because you think it will kind of force Israel's hand in forming a diplomatic solution with Palestinians, more rather, if I got it correctly. Did I?
More or less, yeah.
So who exactly, like which country, which government do you think a diplomatic solution could be made with?
It's actually a good question. And I think, they would have to meet with some sort of delegation from Palestine, and obviously the representation in Gaza right now anyway, being Hamas, that isn't a really good foundation for like a peaceful resolution. I don't know if that's the route you're going, but I understand the obvious problem there. I do think that, like, okay, and this may be going back, to be fair to 𝕵𝖎, it's not too ridiculous to say the U.S. could have a say in some sort of, diplomatic, in some sort of role of overseeing a diplomatic resolution there. But I ultimately think it would have to be some sort of bilateral meeting between a Palestinian representation and Israeli one, and overseen preferably by like maybe the entire UN Security Council.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to harp on this point because you didn't answer me. Like, who is the Palestinian? Who is going to represent them?
Yeah.
I have
to be fair, I really don't have an answer to that. Like, I don't. Okay, in an ideal world, it would be, some sort of democratically elected Palestinian representation that isn't Hamas. Now, Hamas was democratically elected, but elections have been suspended. So it's
okay. So how do we get there? Like, if you,
Yeah.
what do you think? How do you think maybe the U.S. stopping the funding will impact that progression towards what you're saying, towards forming this kind of government,
I think
towards
the
helping it?
U.S. stopping military aid will ultimately stop Israel's, hyper aggression in carrying out military strikes, knowing that there's really no end to the amount of weapons that they can use. They basically have full authority by like the world's police force, the U.S. and its culpable allies to basically do whatever they want. And for that matter, Russia and China are not demonstrating any willingness to step in and stop this either. It just feels like Israel's emboldened to just essentially, if they want to, wipe out the entire Gaza Strip and push everybody out into Egypt and colonize the territory outright. So I think that anything that would stop this bombardment, which is killing thousands of fucking civilians, would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I'm pro ceasefire, but like, what do you think it will be? It will have any negative effect on stuff like, in the sense of like the Iron Dome, which was largely funded.
I want to put a pin in that because I'm curious what everyone else thinks on the ceasefire.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anyone here who is not pro ceasefire? Raise your hand. Okay, so one, but everyone else here is pretty much pro ceasefire. Okay, I just wanted to check to see where we stood on that. But
either that or an approach that stops the
fair enough. I was curious what everyone's stance was on that. But go ahead.
So yeah, where was I? Like
Iron Dome.
Iron Dome, because it's largely like a lot of stuff militarily in Israel. It's largely funded by the U.S. If the U.S. stops funding Israel, sending money, whatever, a lot of Israel's ability to defend itself will be diminished. And to be honest, like it's been like the 7th, October 7th, has been approved that the other side is just as aggressive, if not more. I mean, we haven't done anything like that. What do you think happens if Israel kind of has its defensive abilities diminished?
I mean, I think implying that one, and it's egregious, obviously the October 7th attack, but one massive onslaught, considering the decades and decades and decades of U.S. military support, trying to make the argument that like, okay, this one attack demonstrates that not only do we fund them enough, but we need to continue funding is kind of like a fallacy. Like, I think that the military capability of Hamas and the Palestinians more broadly is a little bit overblown. I do think
the Palestinians have no military power.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that it's a justification to say, well, we should continue billions of dollars of funding simply because Israel was attacked on October 7th. I mean, couldn't an argument be made that like the billions of dollars of funding is actually not making Israel any more secure?
I think the Iron Dome had an insane effect on Israel citizens being able to live more safely. I mean, without it, I think there would be much more bloodshed and death toll would rise like crazy. But I think a more interesting question regarding funds, like when you said earlier that you support the aid going to Gaza, how much of it do you think, if that's okay that I'm kind of diverting it to it, but like how much of it do you think goes to the Gazan citizens in comparison to how much Hamas?
I'm sure those funds are misappropriated. I don't know
how much.
It would just be guessing. It's just conjecture. I have no idea.
Most of it?
I don't know.
At all?
I don't know. You're asking me to literally guess. So
I mean, it's not that far-fetched when you guess something about it, because we can see the state of Gaza with all of the funding. I mean, we're talking about like, I don't know, billions of dollars?
$500 million.
$500 million? All right.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe
$3 billion for Israel?
I think even if half of it got to them, the state of Gaza would look different.
I actually disagree with this. I will
go ahead, Tiberius.
I disagree with this. I'll push back on it. One of the biggest things that concerns me about Gaza is that while you do have a lot of folks there that actually are pretty good people who are trying to make a decent something for themselves, right? You have a leadership that is incredibly kleptocratic. You probably have all seen the videos, but if you haven't, there was a water pipeline system that was built out into Gaza over the last 4 years. It was done through a lot of international effort and international aid, and eventually was torn up in the last 3 months to build the rockets for this offensive. They literally just pulled them all out of the ground, made it to where a lot of folks weren't able to get water in the consistent way that they were, and manufactured those into rockets. And like not Hezbollah, excuse me, wrong people. Hamas happened to like post this up all over like all over social media, and was like very proud of it. It's like, yeah, we turned like the enemy's things into bombs, right? Oh, sorry, my dogs are being jackasses. But yeah, I do not believe that until Hamas is gone, that Gaza is going to be in any kind of a better situation. As far largely out of the fact that their leaders are incredibly kleptocratic. They will do whatever they think is necessary to defeat Israel, even if it means the destruction of Gaza itself, which is a little weird, but they'll do it.
Who are you pushing back against? Not me, I guess.
I actually was kind of going into you because you're like, hey, I think if this X money gets through, then that'll help improve Gaza. Gaza will be a better place, and maybe people will be.
If it gets to the citizens, not if it gets to Hamas. That's
Yeah,
what
Well, even
I'm
if it,
saying.
well, the problem is they kind of go one and the same, because even if Hamas is not, because even if Hamas is not like it's supported by 90% of the people, the problem is that the people are enablers. They are, whether largely coercion. I'm going to say it's coercion. Is that these folks are still letting terrorists in their houses?
It's not coercion; it's brainwashing. They're brainwashed like from babies into supporting Hamas as a terrorist
Well,
organization.
they're brainwashed because they're living in like an open air fucking prison in
Exactly,
like
that's
abject
what
poverty.
I
And
agree.
whether or not that's, well, I guess my point is there's some justification for the brainwashing. It's not like they're treated well by the Israeli government, And I mean, dude, like if you grew up in that environment, there's no way that you could. I mean, I'm maybe just speaking for myself. There's no way I could grow up in that environment and not develop a tremendous amount of murderous hostility towards Israel, whether or not someone was, constantly spewing me with propaganda all the time, because it's evident how terrible conditions are there. And, Hamas plays a part in that. But I think ultimately, like the elephant in the room in our discussion seems to be that Israel is doing, a pretty damn good job of cutting the Palestinians off from any kind of, development.
Yeah, I agree. But like, do you think like, okay, saying the U.S. stops its funding entirely, like, do we just keep the money? Do we divert it to like helping Gaza, Palestinians?
No, I think humanitarian aid is good, but I don't think Israel has
It's
a
not
need.
enough.
Yeah, I don't think Israel has a need for humanitarian aid to the same level that Gaza does. To be quite honest with you, Israel's like a advanced, economy. They're a rich country, like they don't need humanitarian aid from the U.S. They need military aid, and they need military aid essentially to I think, assert their dominance as a regional power. It's not really about Palestine. And we have an interest in having a regional power who's on good terms with us. That's why we send military aid to Israel. It's not even really about protecting Israelis.
I don't
wanna
think
ask
Hamas is clear, though.
If I may, Mono, I wanna kind of maybe open it up a little bit, get more people in the discussion, etc. Maybe kind of redirect a little bit.
Sure.
And I'll just ask everyone, and you could just give me a simple yes or no, and then we'll discuss. And I'll start with Bance. Bance,
Hello.
is Biden enabling a genocide?
Fucking hell. No.
No.
So-
Okay.
mostly no.
We'll get into it. We'll get into it. Blacktoid, is Biden enabling a genocide?
I really want to say yes, but no,
You really?
because it's
wanna-
Biden. Because it's Biden, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Mono, same question.
No.
No?
That's a big word for a small man.
Non-smoker.
Hell to the motherfucking yes.
Tiberius.
Genocide, I'm not sure on. Ethnic cleansing, absolutely.
Okay, ethnic. Oh, sure, ethnic cleansing. We'll go with ethnic cleansing. That's much better, I guess. Fair enough. So, okay, why? Why do you say that, Tiberius? I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so whether it's Biden, whether it's any American president, I want to make that very clear. I criticize Trump for this as well, and pretty much all of the American presidents is. Over the last 30 years, if not longer, the Israelis have had the settlement program. The settlement program is effectively a slow-rolling ethnic cleansing campaign. They are slowly pushing the Palestinians into a smaller and smaller pocket in a smaller and smaller corner, and just removing them from play through the political spectrum. Yes, they do have people that are Palestinians that are within the political system. It's like 20% of their population. But this is the reason why we don't have a one-state solution. They don't want to give the majority Palestinians the right to vote, because in the event that they did, they would be the minority. And it's very clear we are dealing with an ethno-religious centric state that does pride itself on its existence as the Jewish people of the Jewish faith in the Jewish land. They're not going to allow a democracy to usurp into that. And literally, it is an ethnocentric democracy. Because of that, they will never play good faith with the Palestinians, and their only other option is to slowly push the Palestinians into a box and suffocate them to death. So yes, that is ethnic cleansing.
Is that kind of what you think too, non-smoker, or how would you differentiate?
Yeah, I don't want to get off topic again. I would hate to do that, but I would love to know everybody's opinion on the Holodomor. Maybe some other
Okay, yeah,
time.
no, we don't need to
But,
go to the
okay, but
Holodomor.
instead of going there, how about we just talk about the UN's definition? So, with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group, it involves any of the following: killing members of the group, check; causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, check; deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or part, check; imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, check; forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. I mean, fucking come on. You know, like, I don't understand. People are so loose with the definition of genocide. And honestly, you know, to a point where I
can
do
see
feel
that.
like people weaponize that, and they try to, like, you know, turn everything into the Holocaust, which is in many ways an incomparable historical event, you know? And I think that that's bad and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, if we're going to say this, that, and the other were genocides, how the fuck does it not fit this scenario? I really need to hear someone
Good
explain that
question,
to me.
Lactoid. How is it not?
So under like strict UN definition, I actually just had a whole like long conversation on this. I 100% agree with what you said when you said like the word genocide is a little bit overused, and I think it is. We were just running through like crazy hypos. We're technically banning the N-word as gamer genocide under like strict cultural genocide definitions. If we want to be like super pedantic about it, it's true, right? I could argue that and I'd be right. But obviously that's just like a ridiculous outcome. So I think I've gotten to the point where like I'm not sure I care. Like unless we're talking about killing large groups of people, I don't think like I don't think it is a genocide. And if it is defined as that by the UN, I disagree.
Bance, why isn't it a genocide? So, according to Lactoid here, because they're still allowed to say the N-word, it's not a genocide. Why do you say it's not a genocide?
Well, I do think gamers are being genocided. That's something I can agree with. No, but I would say I would agree that it's some sort of like ethnic cleansing. Like the in Israel-Palestine is some sort of is an ethnic cleansing, and I just agree with what's going on there. I don't know if it meets the intentionality requirements, like of the intentionality to like destroy these people in whole or in part. I don't think it meets that line for genocide.
I agree.
I want to ask a quick question on Smoker. Because this is my like idea. My idea would not be to like push people out of Gaza, but it would be for the IDF to come in, occupy the entire Gaza Strip, and then set up IDF schools to basically westernize the children there. Would you consider this to be genocide?
Fuck yes, dude. Yes. We can't bring our liberal bullshit into places in the world and fucking
Wait, is making them liberal genociding them?
Sterilize all culture and turn it Western, dude. It's fucking demonic. Like, no. Fuck no.
Wait,
like,
how is liberalizing them is genociding them?
Dude, if liberalism really is some objectively like true thing that anybody would reach through reason automatically, if they abandon all their, like superstitious presuppositions about meaning and all this stuff, and if they were just really enlightened and all of that, these regions would reach those conclusions on their own organically. We wouldn't have to go in there and teach them how to believe our bullshit.
This isn't answering my question. How is liberalizing them genociding them?
Because the way that Lactoid's defining it, setting up like some sort of IDF re-education, is literally like the erasure of their
Okay, so
fucking culture.
let's not call it re-education. Let's call it just bringing like modern education to Gaza, so people will be educated there and not necessarily
it depends what
brainwashed
you
by their
mean.
government to kill.
Okay, so look,
Is it not better?
Okay, listen, I'm an educator. I teach high school. So it depends what you mean about education. Do you mean that you're going to sit there and attempt to teach like the humanities in a way that
History,
orients students
math,
towards-
English.
Yeah. But you have to understand, there's a way of teaching. In many ways, is like an indoctrinating process. There's ideological presuppositions built into a lot of the things you teach, especially
They're
in the humanities.
indoctrinated to kill.
Well, I think that, yeah, that definitely does happen there. But I also think
It's
that
the only
they're-
thing that happens. Sorry, I can't just let it slide. I need you to tell me, how is it genocide and how is it worse than what's going on there right now? How is it not helping?
would you contend that every single Palestinian in Gaza is equally, committed to the destruction of Israel as those people in Hamas are?
No, but they're equally uneducated because they don't have a proper
but- no,
education
wait,
system.
hold on, because I want to go somewhere with this. Okay, so
Sure.
no, given the fact that, as you put it, they're under 24/7 indoctrination, there's still probably an overwhelming percentage of them who are not committed to the destruction of Israel. So, given that fact, I think it's safe to assume that indoctrination, one way or the other, that's going on there now, doesn't necessarily make everybody there homicidal and crazy and horrible.
I
Is
didn't
that
say
fair
that.
to say?
It's very fair.
Okay, so given that fact, isn't it also fair to say that the foundation that's in place there is there's maybe more to it than just kill Israel, right?
Yeah, kill the West, kill Westerners.
But don't you think it's a
That's a
little
big
bit more
part of
than
it.
that too?
It's not. I don't buy the whole like Hamas is like the Palestinian front
No.
for like their freedom.
I don't.
They're
I
not
don't believe
teaching
that
them to
either.
fight for the Palestinian people.
No,
They're
I don't believe
teaching
that
them
either. I don't believe that either. But I also I don't think Hamas represents every single Palestinian. I mean, they do technically, but I don't
That's the
think they
problem.
I don't think that they encapsulate the views of every single Palestinian. I
Mhm.
think that they're the vast radical, or vast. They're the extreme radical end of that.
But
and
they're the
I happen-
government.
Sure. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's more to like Islamic Arab culture than kill the West, kill the Jews. You know what I'm saying?
That's a different thing entirely because we're talking about Hamas and Gaza. We're not talking about Muslims
So
in general.
well, we agree then. The problem then is Hamas, but to
Mhm.
the idea of replacing Hamas with some sort of Western secular re-education is like not a
That
good
would be
solution.
far superior.
You know
sorry.
where that failed?
based-
Iran. That failed in
Wait,
Iran.
you know where it didn't? Hold on. You know where this didn't fail? Japan. Post-occupation, during the American occupation, the U.S. controlled the educational system of Japan, like rewrote a whole bunch of shit, censored a whole bunch of shit, and like essentially re-educated the Japanese population, and that worked out just great.
Well, now we have anime though, so did it?
Yeah, now
Good,
people
very
die
good
Shut your
point.
whore
Very,
mouth,
very good
working.
point. Yeah, shit.
Yeah, I
But
think
still, that is much preferable to them being like, I don't know, murderous and
Well,
okay,
genocidal.
Japan.
Can
Can I just make a point about Japan real quick? Japan is not a great comparison, and here's why. Japan, actually, their education system and their culture was already fairly westernized during the Meiji Restoration. Like
Yeah.
the Japanese foundation, Japan is sort of like the closest Eastern country to the West culturally in a lot of ways. So the idea of like implementing a Western style education system or Western, liberal values in Japanese society, it's very different than trying to implement those in like this, many ways, far, I don't want to say reactionary, but, ultimately.
Why
like,
not? Why don't you want to
ultra-conservative-
say reactionary?
Because that has like a pejorative quality to it. I'm trying to make
Should
a
we
point
not be
Whatever.
pejorative?
Are
Hold
you
on.
bringing
it
Wait,
back to
stop,
the
stop,
topic?
stop. Should we not be pejorative to any culture that says, "Hey, we should go and just wipe out this group of people"? That
I
is
don't
good. That
think
we're going
I
to
don't
teach our
think
children
that is
that
the
killing-
basis
Don't you dare
of Muslim
westernize them.
culture. I think you're being racist as fuck, dude. That's not
I'm
the
not
basis
talking about
of
Muslims. I'm talking about specifically Hamas, what they teach the children.
Yeah,
in
Hamas
Gaza.
is not the culture of Gaza, though.
Hamas is the ruling
party.
body.
Yeah, but
Oh,
they're
I
not.
don't
They
know.
don't represent the culture.
Is it
though.
not? What is?
There
No,
is
they're
no
part of-
place
they're
for
part of
other culture
Arabic
as long as Hamas
civilization.
is in power.
I wanted to say something real quick. So, what you said about Japan was, again, it's not actually addressing the point. So, yeah, there were certain elements that were westernized in terms of like technology, et cetera, et cetera. But look at like what the U.S. did.
education.
Look at what the U.S. did to the education. You can look this up. Look at what the U.S. did to the educational system of Japan during occupation. They fundamentally changed it. They changed the Japanese language that was taught. They changed the entire reading list. They changed a whole bunch of shit, and they focused on breaking down hierarchical methods of thinking that was in Japan school and replaced that with U.S.
But
methods
dude,
of thinking.
Japanese-
We could do.
Hold on, wait.
No, hold on. I'm in the middle of a point. No. Yes, there are definitely elements that we lessened those. What I'm trying to say.
Failed.
Well, no, we didn't. We did not fail
No.
we did not fail when you look at what the goal was. The goal was
dude,
not to.
we succeeded
Hold
in
on.
cutting
The goal was not to turn Japan
Oh, this is what important.
necessarily into a carbon copy of America, but it was to instill Western values in some very key respects, and it was highly successful. We can do the same thing in Gaza. Israel, if this is the mandate, which I think they should do, and I think this is partially what they did in Golan and Jerusalem, they should occupy that entire area, and they should make them citizens, and then install the IDF installs schools to basically westernize the population there. I mean, it's either that or constant war. There's no other
By the way, they
solution.
can call it Palestine. I don't care. They don't need to be part of Israel. They can call Palestine, but give them education, give them a future. This is not.
I'm not against educating Palestinians, the way he framed it about this westernizing the people there. And let me make a point. Okay, can we all agree that Iran and Palestine is at least a closer cultural comparison than Iran and Japan?
Iran is a country. Palestine is non-existent.
Okay, can I please break the ice here?
Culturally, can we at least agree there's a closer comparison between the two?
Dude, what kind of culture can you have when you're about to die every moment? No, no.
Sure.
I'm sorry, that's a hard no.
Okay, it's a yes. Thank you. So Iran, where we essentially put in a fucking dictator who attempted to westernize the country, and did so for that matter, he was met with a radical, extremely, I will call Khomeini a reactionary, a far more radical contingent uprising and movement came in place of that as a response from the people who were frustrated with these values being impressed upon them. So the idea that we would just go and re-educate the Palestinians and teach them Bill Maher's top 10 best values, and they're going to be then non-militant and aggressive is fucking psychotic.
Well, no. This is the problem, and this is actually where I disagree with Mono, which is we can't half-ass this like we did with Iran and like we did with Iraq, where we give them their own governance while we try to do this. It needs to be a military occupation, like with Japan, and this needs to be implemented prior to people there being able to vote in a government, because what's the kind of government they're going to vote in? The most anti-libertarian government you can think of.
That's absurd.
It's the only way. It's the only way to prevent. It's the only way to prevent ongoing battle.
Okay. Stop. I want to give Tiberius a chance here. Give it go. See if you can do it, Tiberius.
So actually, on pretty much on this point, this is where I agree with Lactoid. I think that the only way to actually solve this, to get it to where you even have a chance at secularization, and again, I actually agree with Non-Smoker on this part, this is a big fucking if. This is a huge carry. So, but I don't trust the Israelis to secularize Palestine. That's not going to fucking happen.
When you say that, you mean you don't trust the Likud, right? Because that's the Israelis you know.
Sure. Anyway, the long and the short, at least here, is that the only way I see this actually going remotely well is that the only democratic nation that can actually force project into the region and occupy and conquer it and institute these values is the United States. We fucking sucked at it before. I don't know if we're any better at it, to be completely honest. And it's going to be a 20-year occupation, minimum. I don't want to do that shit again, and I don't think that we're really cut out to do it.
What do you want to do?
The other side of this conversation, or I'll actually answer that here in just a second. I can point out Iran, but I can also put out the Turks, right? We're talking about two Islamic countries. One of them is far more pro-secular. I can bitch about Erdogan because he's a jackass and he's screaming the opposite direction. But the Turks have had about 100 years of what we would largely call liberal democracy that is secular.
That started organically, though.
Right, and there's a
Not
Yeah,
really.
I
That
don't-
was
I
very
don't-
much
I-
forced on top.
I look, Ataturk was a huge deal. I will say that to a significant degree, this was domestic grown. We also had Iran, which was originally a democratic nation. We helped overthrow that government because they elected leftists, which was a huge mistake because usually democracies go the other way sometimes. We've seen where this can go well, and we've seen where it can fuck up. I don't have any precedent to say the United States really understands the Islamic world well enough to migrate the nuance of actually not completely fucking it up. So, to the question that was asked, what do I think we should do? I think we should just pretty much leave entirely. I don't want to support Israel. I don't want to support Palestine because I think no matter what happens, they're going to kill each
Oh,
other.
so fuck them, let them die, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
Because I think no matter what choice you make, either a bunch of people are going to die. So it's either you literally stamp on the button and you say, all right, I'm going to support someone who commits ethnic cleansing and or genocide, and you just tell them fucking go for it because this problem needs to end. Or you say, look, we can't be your friends, Palestine or Israel, because what you're doing is monstrous. And we understand the situation you're in because we would probably agree with you if we were you, but we're not picking sides in this particular fight. Because I don't know how you make that ethical. Outside of just saying, all right, I support the ethnic cleansing of these people because I don't like these people.
That's lazy.
Um,
I'm sorry, that's just lazy.
That's lazy? Oh, why?
That's
Because
lazy because you're not thinking like you do have to think about it a
Yeah,
bit
so-
ideologically. You do have to hope for a better world and work for it. You can just say no. I'm fucking
No,
off.
yeah.
Let them die. This is like the worst
Oh, you
answer
can
you can
no,
give.
fuck you. You can kiss my whole ass on this one. All right, first and foremost is that sometimes doing nothing is its own choice. And if you don't like that, fuck off. Second
Yeah, I
of
don't
all,
like
and more importantly, is that sometimes, even though you can say, you know what, Israel is trying to be a secular democracy, has a lot of these values that we should appreciate and approach, are they good faith and honest about it? And I think the answer is no. And so, yeah, I am going to say sometimes there's just evil and evil, and you don't have to support either side. And I don't think that's lazy. I think you're just stupid.
No, I think you're lazy. But that's
Okay.
because I'm stupid, probably.
Okay. On the theme of what should we do. So earlier I asked who here does not support a ceasefire. 𝕾𝖍𝖎 was the only one who raised his hand, so everyone else pretty much does. So I want to start with non-smoker, and we'll kind of go around because I'm very curious. Ceasefire happens. Then what? What's the next step after the ceasefire? Ceasefire is put in place. What then? What's the next thing that Israel should do to help solve this problem? Because I think we could all agree the October 7th thing was a fucking problem, right? I'm pretty sure we all agree that was an issue. So how do they solve it? Ceasefire's in place. What next? Go ahead, non-smoker.
I think Israel would be smart to approach the UN Security Council and ask them to vote for some sort of diplomatic summit on neutral ground where all of these countries on the Security Council, or some select number of countries. I only picked the Security Council, not that it doesn't have flaws or whatever, but they happen to contain the largest military powers in the world, the three largest military powers in the world, Russia, China, and the US. And I think that there should be some sort of summit where a representative body from Palestine, it might have to be Hamas because that's all you have to work with, and Israel can meet and attempt to broker some sort of diplomacy here, along with some sort of foundational talks for a two-state solution.
Diplomatic summit, basically, is how
With
I would
Hamas.
Right.
With Hamas.
summarize. Okay. Bance, what's your answer here?
Yeah, so immediate ceasefire, I would then... Nothing is going to get done about Israel-Palestine until there's some sort of recognition of the fact that Israel has committed serious, fucked up, horrible things in the West Bank and in Gaza. So I do agree with the idea of a diplomatic summit. Basically an Oslo 2.0, but this time don't fuck it up. There needs to be, they need to get around the table.
2.0, but don't fuck it up. So diplomatic. Diplomatic. With who?
Yeah. I would probably say the UN Security Council is probably the best way to go.
Okay, but who's representing the Palestinians?
You'd probably bring in both Hamas and Fatah.
So Hamas and Fatah. Okay. Mooncake.
Okay,
not
can I give
a... Oh, go
can
ahead.
I give a small addendum?
Please.
So, being British, unfortunately, and we had the Troubles, the conflict in Northern Ireland, and that was only solved when we brought the British government, the Irish government, the Republican paramilitaries, and the Unionist paramilitaries. All these groups fucking hate each other, but it was the only way to actually get a lasting peace in the region. And there has been lasting peace for 25 years. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's directly analogous. I'm not saying it would work exactly the same. But sometimes you do have to work with bastards in order to
Fair
build
enough.
some peace.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Mono, ceasefire. What then? You seem to be mocking this Hamas idea of a diplomatic
I
summit.
just don't see it happening.
So
I
what
think that
do
what
you
will
see
happen is we'll be
happening?
stuck. I think what will happen in what I want to happen or what I think will happen.
What again, ceasefire, which you said you supported, happens. What should Israel's next step be?
First of all, Netanyahu needs to go ASAP. There needs to be someone who can handle the security situation with Israel and the entire thing that was going on with Israel beforehand. That Netanyahu had been just making it really stupid here. I don't know how else to call it. Like the political situation.
Okay, Netanyahu ousted. What next?
Well, assuming we'll have a stable government who can handle security stuff like that, we'll need to start working towards bettering the situation of Palestinians in Israel.
So
First
increase aid, increase access
education,
to
aid to the Palestinians and Arabs in Israel.
Okay. So, to summarize your answer, so Non-Smoker says diplomatic summit, Vance, diplomatic summit. Mono here is oust Netanyahu.
Aid that gets where it needs to go.
And ensure the aid gets where it needs to go to build up Gaza infrastructure and other...
And the Arabs, Israelis in
and yeah, sure. And Arabs in Israel upped their status within Israel. Tiberius, your turn.
Okay, so I might have misunderstood the question. Obviously, I would like a ceasefire because the civilian casualties in this whole operation has been atrocious. All right, I'm not really fond of people dying. However, is it remotely possible? And I think the answer is just no.
Okay, so you don't support. Just to be clear, you don't
Uh-huh.
support a current, as it stands right now, a ceasefire.
Well, just put it this way: I have no problem with a ceasefire. The question is, can we have one? That's kind of where I'm at. I don't believe that is possible.
Well, assuming it is, assuming
Uh-huh.
it is, and they were able to, okay, Hamas stops firing the rockets, Israel stops bombing. What's the next step?
Okay, so the first round of ceasefire is to actually stop shooting each other. The second one actually would be just getting together and hey, can we work something
Diplomatic
fucking out
summit.
here?
Gotcha.
Right. It's just like
With
diplomatic
Hamas.
summit. Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
But this is where I think this goes off the rails. I don't think the Israelis are going to support that. I think they're fucking done. They're going to figure out how to destroy Hamas completely, and it doesn't matter what it takes. They're going to do it. And then does Palestine really have anyone to support them outside of that? Who's the people who run the West Bank off the top of my head?
Fatah.
Fatah.
Is it
sorry,
Fatah?
I can't pronounce.
If they can get Fatah to usurp over Hamas, you might have a conversation because they've actually had a decent working relationship with the Israelis. I just don't see where Hamas is going to survive and still have a ceasefire. So
what about
Lactoid,
Israeli Palestinians?
Before we go too far into it, one more question for Lactoid specifically, since he's the only one that was nah, ceasefire, fuck that. Why not? Why not ceasefire? What do you want to happen?
Because I feel like a ceasefire is we're just gonna get another 100 years of rockets, airstrike, rockets, airstrike, rockets, airstrike. I think that the issue needs to be solved, and this is the time to solve it after what we saw on the 7th of October.
What do you
and
mean
the way
by
to
solved?
Well, just exactly as I described, right? The IDF needs to move in and occupy the entire Gaza, and there needs to be a permanent, okay, we're going to have schools, we're going to really invest and make Gaza part of Israel, right? And that means culturally, that means economically, that means really bringing it into the country. I mean, that's the only way this doesn't end another 100 years.
That a Israeli citizen does in your example?
Following the military occupation, yes, which is what now Israel has showed an openness to do this, right? When they've offered Israeli citizenship to everybody in Jerusalem, they've offered it to everybody in the Golan Heights. I think it'd be fair that once they occupy Gaza and kind of westernize it, that they do the exact same thing for the people there.
The Fuhrer has spoken.
Dude, it sounds insane, but that's the best question. That's the best answer anyone has given yet.
No, it just sounds insane.
Nah.
Yeah, it's what we did in Japan, and it worked. I mean, it was what we did in Germany, and it
Japan
worked.
Example is so stupid.
We denazified Germany.
Dude,
we actually denazified
think
Germany,
the
and this is
reason-
how we did it.
I think this is another order of magnitude
Okay.
and leap. Like I will kind of come to the defense of non-smoker here, which is weird. I'm never on his side on anything, but I do think that I don't trust the Israelis to do this well. Personally, it's not that they don't have the ability, but I agree with Mono on this one. Like Benny's got to go. Benny absolutely
Baby.
is. BB Benny, I don't really give a shit, dude. Like, old Benjamin Netanyahu, okay? Like, I know who he is, so like, he needs to fucking go, okay? Hell, his replacement was as fucking nuts as he was. Like, I'm not particularly confident in this administration, but no matter what happens, I did want to bring this up. The people who get the theologian funding as part of like the social welfare of the Israeli government, they're the ones who have been running the intelligence agency for 10 years, and they're the ones who completely missed this entire operation. Like, they're actually supposed to have like ears to the ground to where they can find out, oh, we're about to get slammed with a bunch of rockets. No one had it on their fucking radar, which tells me that like this whole scheme where you have people who are paid to largely, become Hebrew scholars, and then they get into the intelligence agency. Yeah, that needs to go. It needs to go really quickly. Sorry, I will rant on for this forever and just go into circles. But
Can I ask you a question though?
sure, what's up?
Like, obviously the Likud, no one wants them to handle anything. But like, do you not trust any sort of government in Israel to handle any sort of situation?
Well, I just don't trust the current government of Israel. I'll put it in that regard. If you actually had somehow to where the Israeli Palestinians or Palestinian Israelis, whichever term you want to use, if they actually were somehow to become like, the popular movement to where it's like, hey, we're going to bring Israel and Palestine together. Like, hey, we think Israel is actually a pretty fucking awesome place. Well, let's bring our Gazan brothers into this. Like, that would be like the dream fuel come true, honestly.
Mhm.
Because I've always believed you're not going to get a 2-state solution. It's going to be a 1-state.
Okay.
And it's
I
just
don't know about that, but the
But
rest what
before
you
we
said, I
go,
agree.
before we go too
Mhm.
far, I know we don't have much more time with non-smoker, and I'm very curious what he thinks. Like, because he called Lactoids take crazy, and I want to hear him elaborate as to why. And
different
also,
thing.
I'm curious of what he thinks of what Tiberius here is putting down with the 1-state solution. Do you support a 1-state or a 2-state solution, or something in between, non-smoker, for the Israel-Palestine situation?
2-state solution, absolutely. Return to the 67 borders.
67 borders. Okay.
But okay, so why is it crazy? Well, it's crazy for I think all the reasons I previously mentioned, that we just have a terrible track record of attempting to westernize and secularize countries around the world. And you can use Japan as an example all you want. The fact of the matter is the Japanese were essentially neutered by the US. They had their entire military capabilities pulled away from them, and they were essentially a US colony. And, in many ways, despite having some sort of Western, imposed values on them, they've managed to hold on to this extremely rigid hierarchical structure that you said that we got rid of by implementing our ultra rigid hierarchical Prussian education inspired model on them. I don't get it, but in terms of the Palestinians, I mean, and a solution being us going or the IDF rather going in there and kicking ass, taking names, re-educating everybody, blah blah blah, go the West. Have you ever stopped to consider that, like, I don't know, Iran, Turkey, Qatar, all these countries probably will have something to say about that. They'll probably intervene. Hezbollah, like, even Russia and China at some point will step in and say, hey, Israel, you can't simply go in and just wipe out all the people you don't like and attempt to, like, I don't know, forcibly re-educate the entire population. It's sort of like, if this were any other context, all of you fucks would be like, this is a crime against humanity and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, because it's a U.S. ally, suddenly the dynamics change. Everybody's standards are totally different. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy on every fucking level. I don't understand how anyone could honestly call themselves a liberal and make that argument, or a libertarian.
Can I ask you, non-smoker, if it wasn't the IDF doing this, and instead a third party, the UN, NATO, the US, China, some neutral third party, right, whichever you want, right, came in basically and sat on Israel and Palestine and said, stop it, we are going to basically force you to both stop killing each other, and we're going to enforce the peace, like a third country, a third party, a third entity, right? Would that be something you would be amenable to? We're not going to talk about the realistic nature of that, because I don't know if it is realistic. No one wants to pay that kind of cost. But at this point, that seems to be probably the only solution that would actually work. In my head, is it needs to be someone that isn't involved currently in the shooting to come in and say, stop your shit, and we're going to fix this.
I mean, look, just going by historical precedent, and a really good argument can be made that empires are stabilizing forces in many ways. So, like, the longest probably, or one of the longest stretches of peace, certainly in modern history, that the Levant, the entire region, had ever seen, was under while it was a subject of the Ottoman Empire. The millet system in the Ottoman Empire essentially granted, religious tolerance to its subjects. I mean, there was a long stretch of peace. So to your point, Wick, like in some hypothetical scenario where a larger third party entity could come in, turn all of these people into subjects, make them all citizens, give them all equal rights, give them all free religious expression. Yeah, in a perfect world, yeah, that would be, I don't know, ideal in some ways. But like you said, I just don't see that being like a reasonable possibility.
The reason I asked is I was just curious if it was just the principle of it, or simply it was the fact that you don't trust the IDF to do it.
Yeah, I think it's more that. I don't think the IDF is like a good foundation for a regional empire there, considering in the Middle East, the Israeli Jews are a religious minority relative to the rest of the region,
Sure. I guess I know you have to go in a moment, and I want to give you a chance to shout yourself out, but one last question before you do. Do you think, right, that the Jewish population, given the anti-Semitism we've seen on display across the globe, including in the Russian city where yesterday, I believe it was, a pack
Dagestan,
a pack of extremists broke in and looked on the tarmac, right, in the airport, and basically tried to find as many Jews as they could. Do you think that Israel, a Jewish state run by Jews for the protection of Jews, is something that is desirable or needed in the world today?
I mean, it's a weird question because, like, okay, one exists, so I definitely don't advocate for its destruction. Second to that, I mean, I do think that the rise in anti-Semitism in the wake of this is really fucking stupid and evil and bad, and anybody who espouses that bullshit is horrible, and they should be, fucking thrown from a helicopter in front of their family.
None of that.
But okay, but with that being said, I generally think in the West, even with a marked rise in anti-Semitism in the last few years, I do think that Jews' religious freedom or the religious freedom of Jews in the West is, pretty well protected. I don't feel like there are like pogroms going on and synagogues being burned and things like that. I do think that there is a rise in anti-Semitism, but I guess what I'm saying, Wick, is like I find the question a little flawed because I don't know if a rise in anti-Semitism is needed to justify Israel's existence. I think Israel already exists. And in terms of this rise in anti-Semitism, it's a problem, but I also don't know if it's to a level where,
Well, there's a lot of people who would call Israel an ethno-state, and therefore ethno-states have no right to exist and should not exist. That's why I'm asking the question. But you have to go, so tell people where they can find you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then we'll continue this conversation. Cool.
Yeah, real quick. And just as a side, if anybody would like to talk one-on-one, would love to speak with each of you. Twitch.tv/non-smoker, non_smoker, and host of the struggle session every other Monday, 8 to 10 at WUSB Radio in Stony Brook, New York, where I'll be starting my show in an hour. Thanks for having me, Wick, and I'll see you all around real soon.
It was good talking to you, man.
See ya.
Bye-bye. With that, if there's anyone who is a sympathetic to non-smokers' position, we were supposed to have 𝕵𝖍𝖎𝖙 on. I don't know. I hope she's okay. She's usually pretty good about showing up. But if there's anyone sympathetic to his position who'd like to come in and join us for this discussion, just jump backstage in my Discord, or DM me, or message me, or get a hold of me. I'd love to have you on to argue with these good people. We still got an hour of content to do, and I wrote a bit of it. But I want to address this question to Mono. Mono, you are an Israeli citizen, correct?
Correct.
You lived there all your life?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that, given the state of anti-Semitism, not just today, but in the past, that it justifies... well, first of all, I guess I'll start by this. Do you think that Israel is an ethno-state?
Yeah, sadly, yes.
Okay. Is that justified based on the way that Jews have been treated throughout history and currently, even today?
Not to the level that it is today, so sadly, like the anti-Semitism and all that. With all that, still, like the amount of far-right extremism in Israel, religious far-right extremism, is just you can't justify it. Regardless.
Do you think that's a result of ethno-states, though? Do you not think that we can have an ethno-state that isn't theocratic in nature?
Maybe, but it will still be bad in other ways.
Fair
like
enough.
I don't want it to be an ethno-state.
Does anyone disagree with this? Anyone think ethno-state actually may be okay?
Can I add something?
Please.
I am in favor of Israel being a haven for Jews, because Jews were always persecuted and are still persecuted. Israel should always be a safe haven for Jews.
How do you keep it a safe haven for Jews without there being some sort of... So, for example, right, one of the reasons that they don't give more, or one of the stated reasons that they don't give Palestinian citizenship and voting rights, is because they would become a minority, and they fear that would be... Is that fear not somewhat justified, given how many in that region just have no love, to put it bluntly, for
I think
Jewish
in Israel
people?
we really need separation between church and state, or
Okay.
synagogue and state. I think that would change a lot of things for the better, because being Jewish is also like a nationality, not only a religion. You all know that.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. I'm an atheist.
Gotcha. What's everyone else's thoughts on this? I want to get everyone else.
Can I ask? So I thought this, and I'm just looking at it. So you define Israel as an ethno-state, but
To
you don't
some
want...
extent, at least, yes.
Yeah, well, that's critical, right? To some extent, at least, because it's not a true ethno-state in the idea that like anybody can become a citizen. And so, you kind of expressed the idea that you wanted to be a safe haven for Jews, but then also not really an ethno-state in the sense that anybody can like become a citizen. My understanding is, according to Israeli law, although any Jew in the world can go to Israel and become a citizenship, get a citizenship, anybody can get a citizenship if they've had residence there for 3 years.
Yeah, sure. I don't disagree.
And
I
there's
think
like
you
what,
might
20...
be a bit more educated than me on some stuff related to this.
No, that's
is
fine.
funny.
No, that's totally fine. And so I guess it doesn't make the point then, right? I mean, 20% of Israel is Arab, right? And they're citizens. And they have offered citizenship to the Arab population of Jerusalem and the Arab population of the Golan Heights, right?
I guess to make sense of this, to me, Israel is more of an ethno-state than I would ever want it to be. Maybe it's not like...
That's fair. Yeah.
That's more of what I... because it's obviously not on paper like just pure ethno-state. That would look entirely different. But it's very, very like in that direction.
No, that's very fair. And I agree that I don't think that ethnicity should be a factor in anybody's citizenship. And ideally, we push, once Israel, I guess, doesn't feel under threat all the time, maybe they may be more open to those changes. But I mean, does anybody here disagree with Israel I don't know, I guess
Yeah, we
having the
need.
right to return
Okay,
law.
gang. Look, if you're in the audience and you're an Israel hater, like I'm talking hater. If you are anti-Israel, we need you. We need you to
Come
help
at me,
balance this
Scrambler.
out.
Well, and to be clear, we have ethnostates in the U.S. Right, Native American tribes, 70% of them are ethnostates. So if you're going to take a principled position against ethnostates, like you have to compel most Native American tribes to either dissolve or reform their citizenship requirements to allow white people.
I want to answer Wick's question because the answer is I don't know. Because on one side, like there's kind of almost a spectrum of like full throttle ethno state to where it's for these people who speak this language with this religion, and then it's like, all right, you have like the soft core ethnocentrism, which is basically what the Americans did post the banning of slavery, right? To where it's like, oh hey, you're technically a citizen, but we're gonna like subject you to like Jim Crow and shit, right? Like soft core ethnocentrism, if you guys want to call it that, like that's a very real thing. I don't know if I support any of this, but there's also levels to where it seems to be something that humans have not demonstrated an ability to escape. Germany's for the Germans, French for the French, Holland for the Dutch. Almost every nation has its foundations within an ethnocentric identity, and I don't think anyone has actually made the process of abandoning that outright. We can talk about the more open countries when it comes to like literally the diaspora of peoples who inhabit them, United States and Canada, being made up of over 20% immigrants and, and other groups that aren't even associated as part of that ethnicity. But have we succeeded in transitioning from that form? I mean, how many people still say that America's for the white people? I don't know where one ends and one begins, to be completely honest. And if that sounds a little bit spastic, I apologize, but there's a part of this where it just doesn't compute in my own head, if that makes any sense.
I wanna give a chance for Temperance here. I called for anti-Israel people. Temperance just showed up. What are your thoughts? I want to give the mic to you for a minute.
Come at me.
All right. I'm not 100%. I'm going to be as nasty as you want, Wick. So I'm going to apologize for
It's
that.
okay not to be nasty. I just need someone with a strong opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
So my material is the problem is that it has this huge conflation, or people not able to make the distinctions between race, religion, nationality. Like there's all these factors involved that makes the whole situation doubly complicated because like you have Jewish Arabs living in Israel. You had them living in Israel before the whole British occupation even happened. So they're being natives to Israel. They're being native Jews to Israel is a thing. However, a lot of after the British occupation that started in the 1930s, a large portion of Jews that do live in Israel now are phenotypically European, not Arabs. So this is where you get into the very complicated mixture again of between race, religion, nationality, all that stuff. And that just makes the situation that much more volatile because you have Jews of European descent who are, and I know one person on here is Israeli, so he can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to admit some shortage as far as my education on this. But basically you have Jews in Israel of European descent who are saying, no, we are native to this land just because we happen to have an Arab Jewish ancestor from like 20 generations ago.
I'm native to this state because I was born here.
That's
I'm
not
asking as a Jews, by the way.
Being born in an area is not nativity. That's like me saying that I'm native to North America because I was born in the USA. I'm Northern European. That is my nativity.
Wait. Why does it not make sense to say I'm native here because I'm born here?
Well, I don't know what race and being born somewhere are two completely different things.
Okay. So what you're saying is like you as an individual are native here because you were born here, but your people are not native to this area.
Native,
Yeah.
a person born in a specified place or associated with place by birth.
Sure. So like,
Correct.
where's the threshold here? Like, how long do we have to be here before we're native? Because like almost everyone on this planet is not native to where they currently live.
Okay, so I don't have access to a computer right now. Maybe somebody can look. What percentage of people who live in Israel were actually born there?
Most of them now.
Yeah, by this point, most of us. Oh, you
Okay.
want like a specific
Right, the
percentage?
since the 1930s. I mean,
according to the OECD, it's 26%,
Really?
which is pretty high.
Oh, well, fuck me, I guess.
Wait,
Well, wait, hold
26
on.
yeah.
I just literally, I'm going to see what year this is for. Hold on, maybe I'm late.
Yeah, 26% foreign-born now, I could totally believe, but not...
Oh, that's
not-
2009. Sorry, hold on.
Yeah, 26% that are only have been natively born in Israel. That's really hard to
If that
believe.
is true.
No. I said 26% immigrants. So
Oh,
26%.
no.
yeah.
We
People-
were thinking you were saying 26% native
Yeah.
born.
No. But
Because if
that's
that was
also
true,
wrong.
that
that's
was
also
true, then we
wrong.
have an issue, right? Like,
Yeah. That's also wrong though. So that was from 2009. It was
Okay.
26% are immigrants. So it's probably even a lower percentage now. I'll keep looking.
So 26% immigrants, at least in 2009. That's fine. We can work with that, right? So that it would be fair to say that over 70% were born there, right? I guess to ask you, Temperance, right? Just to get an idea of your stance here. Do you believe Israel has a right to exist?
I believe that Jews do have the right to a country where they can be safe and free from prosecution.
But Israel
not Israel.
specifically. Do you think Israel has a right to exist?
So my thing is, and again, this is from what I looked into it.
Sure.
At the time that Britain and France started encouraging Jews to move to Israel, it was at the time a British territory. And from what I understand, basically their whole move for that was because after all the stuff that happened after World War I, they essentially just wanted their Jewish population gone, and they were willing to give them this land that they really didn't want anyway. And the problem was they moved them to land where people were already living. And since then, it's been 80 years of oppression, violence, ethnic cleansing, and, call it whatever term you want to, is European Jews and Jews from all over the world have been moving to this little piece of land.
Immigrated, to be clear. They immigrated there.
Immigrated.
Mm-hmm.
And have been slowly pushing out the original population ever since.
Are you in support of immigrants to America? Why or why not?
So my whole thing is I actually don't like national borders at all. If we could completely eradicate them, I would do it. Because I believe people should have the freedom to travel, not only for their own personal opportunities, but also being able to get away from bad governments, to be able to get away from danger.
So why was it bad
people have
that
the
the Jews
travel.
decided to move to Israel?
Because they did it through violence.
The European Jews fleeing from the Holocaust did it by violence.
Once they got to Palestine and started oppressing the native Palestinians, yes.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I guess my issue with this, and I don't want to get into the origin thing because yes, that did happen, but the Palestinians also were trying to kill the Jews that were coming in too, because they viewed them as colonizers and they wanted them gone and dead. And so you had
right after the declaration, by the way, not like
this was in the 20s, right? Like the Balfour Declaration. That's one you're talking about, correct?
Is my mic
Declaration
working?
of Israel.
Oh, Bance?
There
was skirmishing before that.
Yeah, so this idea that it was just all one, again, you had...
Oh no, there's definitely enough shit on both, to throw on both sides.
Sure. I guess, but my question, right, and why this kind of bothers me, is because a lot of this rhetoric against Israel sounds like it's just rhetoric against immigrants in general.
Exactly.
Right? It sounds like there is a group of people who are coming to our country that are going to take away our jobs, displace us, make us a minority in our own country, and therefore we should kick them out or keep them out. Sounds like great replacement theory to me. And I'm just trying to I'm struggling here to figure out what's the difference between how we denigrate when a white nationalist would say that about America versus us talking about a Jewish immigrant. In the case,
I just want to know where you want to put us, like all the Jews from Israel. Take all the Jews and put them where?
Oh, so what is the line between the emigration? When does it become a problem, I guess, because the Jews that ended up in what we now call Palestine they're largely there because of pogroms, because of the Holocaust. Like, I don't see where else they were supposed to go.
I'm assuming that was a question at me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
just wanted to be sure. So the thing is, I mean, they're living there. A lot of them have been there for multiple generations. They're not going anywhere. So there has to be either an international intervention to essentially force a two-state solution. Basically, a bigger bully needs to jump in between the two bullies, split them up, punch them both in the face, and tell them, look, y'all are going to your corners. Just don't talk to each other for a couple decades
USA,
and
go on.
cool off.
They already did that, though, in 1948, and the Arabs, the second that went into effect, the Arab world just attacked Israel. Like,
Indeed.
in 1948, when the first Arab-Israeli war, just
Like
after Israel declared
many
independence.
times, many
Yeah.
times.
Like, the problem is that, like, Israel is like it's a hyper-militant state, but it's also like they have very good reason to be hyper-militant and to have such paranoia about the Arab world. Is because they have on several occasions just been fucked or
And-
attempted to. The Arabs usually fail.
Just a housekeeping
Right, and
issue.
that's-
Just a housekeeping issue, real quick, gang. If you're in there and you want to support Palestine, if you are pro-Palestine, anti-Israel, we need you on this panel. So jump backstage, and I'll bring you in. And I want to give Temperance some support here, and just
You're
make
gonna
sure she has someone in her corner. So please.
So there's 2 points there that I wanted to address. One, this is why, looking back, honestly, the entire formation of Israel as a Jewish state was a stupid move to begin with. It was dumb. The location was picked for sentimentality reasons on the part of Jewish people, and just because it was a territory that Britain didn't want anymore. The entire placement of it was dumb. Because you notice that when they talk about giving Israel their own state, they didn't say, hey, let's carve out this chunk of, like, all of us European countries will get together and we'll rip up, we'll designate a chunk of Europe for all these Jews to live in and create their own state. America didn't offer up any land and say, hey, we're going to basically do a essentially equivalent to native reservations, where we're going to give you this territory in America. Y'all can come here, live safe, be, essentially sovereign in our own country. They didn't offer up their own land. They didn't offer up their own. They went to someone that they were already oppressing and said, here, y'all can have this.
Well, hold on, Britain gave
can
up
you
their
all
own land.
imagine the Jews running Vegas? Like I'm like that. That's literally kind of what you're pitching here.
Essentially.
Like, there's a reality here, right? The Brits kind of did that in the regard they're like, hey, we have an empire. You guys can go back to what you're claiming as your ancestral homeland. We, as the Great British Empire, allow this. Whether you think that was intelligent or not, like, that's effectively did what happened. The problem is that I think literally when it comes to the arguments, both sides are pretty much dead even when it comes to historical narrative and historical precedents, because at no level have either of these peoples not lived there for the last 3,000 years.
Yeah, and that's where the problem comes. That's like what I was saying earlier, where you have Palestinian Jews. There have always been Palestinian Jews there. So the idea that having Jews living in Israel is somehow a new thing, it's disingenuous at best and retarded at worst. I'm sorry. No, you don't like that word, Wick. Sorry.
You can say it on air. You just can't say it in my Discord.
Whoops.
No, it's okay to say retard on the air. Look, I don't want to get into it. Total tangent.
Yeah.
But yeah, fair enough. Responses to that, gang. Yeah.
I mean, look, it was Britain. It was Britain who gave part of the land. I mean,
It's all our fault.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Like,
literally
there's
is your
a
fault.
there's a ton of
Right.
there's like
half the world's
there's a
fucking
ton of
problems.
shit here. There's a ton of shit here, and I honestly, going back to my proposition, I think I don't like this concept of like blood and soil, or like the land belongs to some kind of group, some kind of like ethnic group, or we got too many of these people coming in, well, we got to keep them out. I think the question is just like, at the end of the day, what's going to be better overall? Which, I mean, it's not Palestine, not the PLO running Israel. I mean, we know that.
Well, since you're here, Temperance, I suppose I'll ask. Do you support a ceasefire?
Of course. I mean, people are dying.
Hell yeah.
What happens
that's
after
bad.
the ceasefire, in your opinion? What should happen after the ceasefire? Ceasefire, you snap your fingers, Biden puts pressure on Netanyahu. Netanyahu and Hamas decide, okay, ceasefire's happening. What next?
So, like, I mean, in my dream world, of course, there's a difference between what we would like to happen and what will actually
what do you
happen.
think? Okay, what do you think is most likely? What would you advocate for to happen? I guess. What would you advocate after the ceasefire? You get your way on that. What's the next advocacy that you're making?
My advocacy at this point would just be to split Israel in two and create an independent Palestine and an independent Israel. And but everyone who keeps bringing up the 67 maps, have you looked at the 67 maps? They make no sense. Like, a whole new map has to be, beside the fact that most of that probably wouldn't work now anyway, depending on how the land's been changed and that over time. But I mean, a two-state solution is really
okay.
That's the
Say
only
that happens. Two-state solution.
this
You draw the map so there's congruous, like they're not partitioned like they are now, so that the whole Palestine is connected. Hamas gets Fatah and gives them flying lessons, right? Basically throws them all off the roof, takes over. Iran continues to fund money, and now we have even more land, even more power, even more population. We're going to wipe Israel off the map. When do we get involved?
The problem with Iran is both the same problem and also a completely separate problem. It is a sovereign country that we have already sanctioned to the gills. We already know that it has an undying hate for Israel and pretty much any country that's not Muslim, and that they fund and filter weapons and that too over probably a dozen different terrorist organizations at this point, for the sheer purpose of killing Westerners.
So
we know
split
that.
Israel in two and hope they don't kill us. Like
No,
I want
I
to
mean,
hear
that's
how you go in depth.
I mean, if we want a real solution to the problem, then I mean, yes, it would cause even more problems in the long run. But I mean, we need to find a way to completely isolate Iran. Iran is too much involved, and
surely just like the Iran deal, and they trying to normalize relations with Iran.
Well, to my knowledge, the only thing that the Iran deal did was it was supposed to halt their nuclear program.
Yeah, but
like, as far as I know, that's the only thing that was supposed to do.
Yeah, but it's also like a step towards normalization with Iran and having it more congenial relationships with the West, which I do think is probably necessary for Israel to ever feel safe, is to have an Iran that isn't completely fucking mental.
Yeah, but how is that even accomplishable? As long as I'm going to completely butcher his name, Ayatollah Khamenei. I don't know if that's like a person or an organization, but like as long as that exists,
the Ayatollah.
Just call them the Ayatollahs. That's what I do.
Yeah. I mean, as long as that exists, there is no possibility of normalization for Iran.
I already disagree on that shit. Look, there is an underlying pressure under Iran to liberalize. The vast majority of the population, I honestly do not believe, likes the current government in any way, shape, or form. Remind you, it is a multi-ethnic empire. You still have the Persians who oppress, if you will, 50% of the population. It's only about half controlled by the Persian people. The rest of it is Arabs and a combination of Kurds and a few other peoples that are just kind of usurped into the wider region. A whole other conversation. But we have seen earlier last year, we've had a shitload of women demonstrated, marched, and almost there was a real conversation if we were going to see a revolution in Iran, just because how pissed off women were, and visibly so, in that country. We have their economy is in shambles. Literally 50% reduction in GDP in 5 years. Not necessarily no one. Basically a bunch of old men like this country the way it is, but it's getting to the point where if you can flip the young men to say, fuck it, we're done, you have a revolution on your hands. So there's absolutely room to move with Iran. I just don't know how we Westerners can do it effectively because we suck at it. We're really bad at it, but it's
We're
something that
terrible at
absolutely.
Republicans.
But it's something that we can absolutely, if somebody knew the handbook, and maybe we need to have to talk to the Turks about this, to actually move the needle to a more liberal direction for Iran, oh, we can change shit pretty goddamn quickly.
Yeah, like the Ayatollah and the Council of whatever the fuck it is, the Islam Council, they've never had as strong a grip on Iranian society as like the House of Saud has had in Saudi Arabia. Like Iran could very easily be like in a transitionary stage towards democracy, but I think most folk agree it's like a ticking time bomb on that right now, especially with what we've seen in the last year.
So
I don't.
I think there's, because like you both kind of just reiterated what I think I was trying to say. It wasn't that Iran can't change, and hopefully they do have a revolution sometime in the next decade. That would be wonderful to see. But I'm just saying is as long as those who are in power remain in power, they will keep funneling weapons. They will keep funneling money. That it will not end until they are removed from power.
So what does a ceasefire do then? Like, if you acknowledge this, right, and we acknowledge that Iran funds Hezbollah, funds and sends money as well as Qatar towards Gaza, right, into Hamas specifically, a ceasefire stops it for now, but isn't that just kind of kicking the can down the road?
It is.
Okay.
The ending to this is not going to come from outside forces. It has to come from within. They have to stop hating each other. They have to stop throwing bombs at each other. No outside force is going to get them to do that. They have to be there has to be either one of two. The way I see it, there's three possible outcomes. One, the regular people of both sides overthrow both their governments and say, y'all ain't doing your jobs. We're going to step in and we're going to essentially having a revolution on both sides, and they finally coming to the peace talks. One side destroys the other. What I say? I said three. But those two, either they're going to come to peace on their own, or one side is going to destroy the other.
Fair enough. I just don't see peace on their own coming anytime soon. Like, they've been trying this 75 years.
Except has it really though?
What do you
because
mean?
outside countries have been trying to get them to come to peace, but have the forces within
do you remember
really
when
been wanting peace?
Yasser Arafat and Rabin shook hands, like during the Oslo Accords, right?
Yeah.
Like the Oslo Accords. Let's be clear why the Oslo Accords didn't work. Two reasons. Because the Hamas equivalent at the time vetoed it by letting off a series of suicide bombs, and or martyrdom operations, as they like to call it, or right, and the extremists within Likud and stuff assassinated Rabin, right? They killed him. Yet still, even in 2000, the winning party in Israel wanted to end the settlements, right? End the occupation, end all that, right? In 2000, that's what they wanted to do. Israel was going that direction until the Second Intifada, in which case Hamas, or the equivalent at the time, decided to veto that as well, setting up 140 suicide bombs between, I think, 2000 and 2005. And those were just as successful ones. So they are not going to be allowed to make peace because there are extremists on both sides who will not allow that to happen. So I guess I don't see them doing it on their own. It has to come from somewhere outside, right? I guess I totally disagree. Someone outside needs to come in and step in and say, no, stop this shit.
Unless there's
except how can that end in anything else other than just outside military occupation for another
outside military
100 years?
Occupation could sometimes be based.
Not
More
historically.
based than people killing each other all the time, definitely.
Like, no matter which way this pretty well goes, unless there is a major cataclysmic reorientation in like geopolitical affairs, either Israel wins quickly or they win slowly. And I'm not going to get into the consequentialist ethics of like, hey, do we want people to die now or die later, or slower amounts over a longer period of time? I don't give a shit at this point. The real question is that, like, what will Israel have to do to win outright between now and then? and there's levels where like I don't want to be a part of that personally. I do favor Israel over Palestine for a number of different reasons, but there's still levels to where I'm like, yo, if you all got to do this shit and clean house, like I understand, because like I would probably be one of those radicals if I was Israeli. I'll remind you all, I would feel the same way if I was a Palestinian.
Well, I want to.
'cause I'd be a
Okay,
radical.
I just want to, because people I think are getting my position here clear. I do not support what Israel is currently doing. I think that they're
Sure.
going with overkill. I think that they're cutting off the food, water, electricity, etc. Is just a humanitarian crisis that is going to be catastrophic in nature. I think that Israel, the IDF specifically, isn't using the care it should in order to prosecute this war. That said, Hamas needs to go. There has to be a military action. I don't know if I support ceasefire. I go back and forth on it. I want the killing to stop. Absolutely. But realistically, do I see Hamas honoring a ceasefire? No, I just don't. So, I don't know. That's where I'm at. Anyway, carry on, Tiberius. I just wanted to make that clear, my position.
Sure. Like I was kind of gonna ask you that one because it seemed like you were pointing somewhere, and I wasn't quite sure where you wanted to go with it. But like I just, aside from dream utopia bullshit, right? Just like putting this on the floor. Where do I say this? Israel is going to like slowly like choke out the Palestinian people. They may get to a point where they can integrate some size of the body politic into Israel proper down the line, but it's going to be whenever they're like 30% of the population that could be assimilated at max. They're never going to let it become a diversion of an ethno state, or at least I don't believe that they will. Now, if you have more people like Mono who want to prove me wrong, fucking go for it. I don't know if that's actually gonna happen, and I don't want to hold out that hope because it just feels like way too pie in the sky for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Gang, I once again am reaching out to my chat to help balance this panel out because we have a lot who are more sympathetic to Israel, and we need more people who are more sympathetic to Palestine. Unfortunately, the people I had lined up ditched me, and so I would love it if my audience, the Wickers in chat, can rise up, right? And from the river to the sea, make my panel a little more pro-Palestine. That would be lovely.
Just a little.
Bring in like an active Hamas fighter into the...
Tiny bit.
Yeah, I apologize for not being like, I want to support Palestine.
Well, I know
but it's
weaponized
definitely
discourse.
like,
I know weaponized
I was
discourse in my chat is very pro-Palestine, and I'd be curious to have her position on why she supports a ceasefire, what she would like to see happen after a ceasefire, and what she thinks is actually going to work here. So while I won't have Sunday on, I will have you on weaponized discourse. Jump in my chat, and we'll make this happen. So.
I can ask some questions. Temperance, you said before that you are not a native to this land. I'm guessing you live in America?
Yes.
Do you think you have like an obligation to give your land back to the Native Americans?
Given the fact that I have no heirs, there is a good chance. Well, I own no property either. But should that ever change in my life, then there's the possibility that yes, I would actually leave in my will anything I have to someone of Native heritage.
Okay. Do you think America?
Whoa. I missed that. Repeat. You would leave your property if you had it to someone of Native American heritage.
Sure, if I didn't have a hair of my own.
Fair enough. Do you think that should be something other? Would you encourage others to do the same in that position?
Sure, why not? I mean, they have to leave it to somebody, and right now, I mean, if you look at a lot of the reservations, I mean, they're literally like, what was it? I think last time I looked up the statistics, something like 78% of Native Americans live without running water and electricity.
Are not Native American...
I could be wrong on that, I will admit.
Yeah, but like, so reservations, they have a lot of problems, right? I guess I'll just ask, do you support reservations?
I mean, I support that Native nations should have them.
Sure, yeah. Maybe not in the current state, like a better reservation you could support, yeah?
I believe that a lot of restitution needs to be made. For example, I can't remember which one it is, but right now they are having to barter with their water rights
Yeah, yeah.
because they have water rights, but they don't have enough money to get the equipment to process that water to give themselves water. They shouldn't be having to sell those water rights. The American government should just be giving them the equipment they need to be able to produce their own drinking water. As an example.
Interesting. Okay. Do you?
So we
Aren't they ethnostates though? Like,
I mean, ethnically, yes, because everyone who lives there is in the tribe. However, not everyone who lives there is necessarily, because given native, and I'm not native, so
sure.
I'm but from what I understand, because of the history of the colonization of the US, large portions of native tribe members only have, a lot of them are biracial, a lot of, to ever smaller and smaller extents, because the only way really for them to grow their numbers is for them to marry into other races.
Okay. Fair enough. Do I have any actually indigenous people in my chat who want to jump on? Because I'm very curious. I'd like to pick your brain on this. So jump backstage if you are.
If you can, for like a 2 seconds, can you say to me like what's the situation with the reservations? Just like
sure, I can tell you all about it.
Oh,
So, roughly 70% of the Native American reservations in the U.S. have citizenship laws that are based on blood quantum. You have to be sufficiently Native American in order to be a citizen, and that means the non-Native American citizens or non-Native Americans that are living on reservations can't be citizens of the tribe because they don't have enough Native American blood. So technically, they're second-class citizens, which would make them apartheid states, right?
Yeah, but those laws were made by the U.S. government, not by the tribal governments.
No, so the U.S.
No.
Hold on, the U.S. absolutely had statutes in place. Those statutes have since been gotten rid of, and the 70% of Native American tribes that have blood quantum requirements do so because of their own constitutions. They could change them.
Yep, we run off of our own tribal councils that make those laws.
Fair enough.
And Samantha, you
So
are
they're apartheid
indigenous,
states.
just to be clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you explain well, first of all, is there anything Lactoid said that was off the mark? Do you want to clarify anything? Right?
No, me and Lactoid have talked about this before.
Fair enough.
Who the hell let you on here, Samantha?
Wick did.
I'm excited.
This is gonna get spicy. All right,
I really hope
No,
so.
it's not. No, it's not. I'm very milquetoast on this, but like, I'm just here to Wick wanted somebody to confirm. No, like we use blood quantum, and the tribes that don't use blood quantum will have you like do your lineage, right? They'll have you put down like the last 5 generations of your family to find who else was there, right? So if you're like me and you were born there, it's going to be a lot easier. Like you were born on a res. Like if you have the generations thing, like it's a way to gatekeep, right? In a good way. Like this is a good thing. But all in all, we have a tribal council. We run by our own laws. We cannot vote unless we have an address off the reservation. Like we are our own independent little sub-function. We're like subletting property from the United States government in the end, if you want to understand like that kind of analogy. But yeah, we are pretty ethnostates, I would say. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a safe space against. It's a safe space away from white people.
And just real quick, people in my chat who are saying, "Oh, nice balanced panel." If you are pro-Palestine, please, I'm begging you at this point, come into the chat, and I will drag you in, and you will have a platform, and I will give you space. I want you here. I want to hear your perspective. Right?
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Begging. Go ahead.
So I might be misheard, but so if you're in like a native reservation that's within like, I don't know, fucking Nebraska or wherever, can you vote in like the presidential elections, or if you're a congressperson?
If you hold on, yes, you can. If you have an address that is off the reservation, in most cases.
But if you're lived and born there, you couldn't vote for.
That's hit or miss. That depends on the reservation.
That's fucked.
No. It depends on the reservation because some states have like certain you have like the federal law, and some states have like different laws. So some reservations, depending on where you're at, like if you live on the reservation, no, you also don't get to like use some government programs. Like you have to go through other programs to like within the tribe, and then like it reaches out, and then you can use government programs from the United States. Like there's process. It's not just like a direct like, yeah, cool, here you're here, you can vote. It's not like just a normal thing. In some places, it's not blanket across the board. But like I said, it depends on the reservation, depends on the laws in
I
that
want
state
to.
as well.
Okay, I think
Okay, thank you.
we've gotten the indigenous portion down. I'm curious, right? So, given that the fact that we're okay with this, right, or at least I think we're okay with this, is anyone against this?
I just want to clarify, Samantha. I love you. Native Americans can vote even on their reservations. They can vote for president or within their state.
Depends on the reservation.
I don't know if
They
any
have,
reservation
they have
that
the
bars
authority.
you.
No, they have the authority from the federal government. Like they do, right? Then it comes down to like states and then like the tribal councils as well. Like there's other like factors in between.
Well, I think to put this in a little bit of context, and you
We
correct
can
me
talk
if I'm
later
wrong,
about that.
aren't there like
We'll get back to Israel Palestine. You and I
535?
should talk about it.
Okay.
Aren't there like 535 acknowledged tribes in the U.S.? I don't know if that translates
Fuck
to
if
the
I know.
number of
I'm only from
reservations.
one of them.
I'm saying is that there's a lot more out there than people seem to think there are.
Sure.
True, and a lot of them have to share reservations as well.
What I'm trying to kind of pick apart here by this line of questioning and trying to like wrap my brain around is why we are against it when Israel wants it, and why we support it when the indigenous populations want it. What is the primary difference? And I don't know. Like, it seems to me, at least, that with the indigenous populations, at least in America, they are far more of an ethno-state than Israel is, and yet no one's giving them shit, right? So what's the difference?
I don't
because you have to. I was going to say because sorry. I was going to say because you have two major differences. One is the oppressed, where the other is the one with the power. You also have to distinguish between one being done through violence and the other one being done through weird bureaucracy. So,
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like there is like I don't know how I feel about this, but like if I was the devil's advocate, what I think someone who is part would say is that the natives were like genocided, and this is basically all they have left, and it's like basically a concession. Whereas I think Israel has with a lot of the territory. I know I don't believe this.
Yeah, but like weren't the Jews?
I mean, the Jews were genocided in multiple. Yeah, before World War II, you had the Russian pogroms.
Yeah,
they were facing genocide and killing on every place they've tried to be. So it was like give them a space to not be genocided.
Yeah, like literally. Okay, so this is the problem I have with this. Right? It's like, all right, cool. We're gonna say, hey, these people have been oppressed. They don't have a land to call themselves, so we give them a land, right? Whether it be natives or whether we be Israel. And then Israel got to a point where it grew out of basically being oppressed to where it could become the oppressor, right? Because now it's fighting another people. They are clearly winning in there. It's like, all right, now they've lost their mandate. I'm sitting here. I'm like, look. This is why I don't like take up a lot of these arguments as far as like, oh, you know, Israel is great and they're our allies because they're winners versus Palestine are losers. Like, I don't really care. Like, what is the reason that they're fighting? It's an ethno-religious conflict to where, you know, these folks don't like each other for a fuckload of reasons. Should we support one or the other? And I will pretty much put into this. If you're talking about the ethical standing, fuck no. If you want to talk the bias of, hey, Judaism is far more akin to what we find normal and that we can work with that better than what Palestine is, then that's pretty much the only argument you can make for me.
So, hi.
Israel's just closer.
Hello. Are you pro-Palestine, Food Chops?
I am pro-Palestine to a degree.
Elaborate.
Yeah, so I guess the main problem is that when it comes to Palestine, I guess the main issue is that when people discuss it, it's not exactly that. Okay.
Stop. No, let me just ask you directly. Do you think Israel is committing genocide in Gaza right now?
No, there's not enough information.
Do you think that
the Twitter lefties aren't coming, Wick? They're hiding.
Do you support a ceasefire?
I don't have enough information for that. No.
Okay, you are not helping me, Food Chops.
Wait, what Do you want epic blood?
I want
Is that
the
what?
people
The
who
problem
are
is the
complaining at me.
Nakba.
No,
Wait,
what I want,
the
what I
problem
want,
is the Nakba.
what
The
I
problem is the
want.
way
Food
the
chop.
Nazis-
What I want.
the problem
What
is the
I
way they
want.
driven out.
I want someone to like punch me ideologically.
I
right
want
now. I'm not
someone
getting this.
who fundamentally
do you want Sunday to come
disagrees
in?
with the panel to come on and state their case. I would
Yeah,
love
somebody,
that to
somebody
happen.
reach out to
I
Nine
am-
Tails and Sunday.
Well, first of all, Sunday, no. But Nine Tails, if she wants to come on, is welcome.
You know what the hilarious thing is? I'm pro-Palestinian and I haven't been challenged on like my pro-Israel takes.
Because
one
none
time.
of us here are anti-Palestine. Well, except for maybe Lactoid.
Whoa, wait. Yeah. I'd be anti-Palestine.
Yeah,
pretty
Why
I think
are
Lactoid
you
is anti-Palestine. But the rest of us are like,
Wait, what?
Palestine's cool. We like Palestine. We just want
I
Hamas
wouldn't go
gone.
that far. I might be pretty close to anti-Palestine, but the problem is like what Israel has to do to quote unquote win is still unethical as shit.
I'm
So-
anti-Gaza, but I'm pro-Palestine.
Anti-Gaza.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
all right,
Explain
you're-
yourself.
Well, because with Hamas's rule of Gaza and their history of coercing people through fear or like threats of death, if we were to take people out of Gaza, right, and be like, do you support them genuinely or is it coerced? There's no way to actually tell, which is why the other Muslim countries don't want to take them in because there's too much of a risk or a threat. They've already fucked with Egypt. They've already fucked with Jordan. These people are unfucking trustworthy. It sucks, but it is the way it is. You know, it's that whole if like one Nazi sits at a table with 9 people, they're all Nazis and they're okay. Same thing with the people of Gaza. Okay, they're all fucking psychotic shitheads. And until we can differentiate who's factually not a psychotic shithead, it's too big of a risk.
Well, there's also the problem that every time any surrounding country takes in any Palestinians, they never take them back. Like, it's happened to Lebanon, it happened to Jordan, and
Or the
right
talk
now
about that.
Egypt's
That's a
like,
good-
you ain't doing this shit to us again.
That's a good point, Temperance, because I want to talk about this as well. I wish I had Vivian here to talk about it. Vivian, wherever you are, I hope you're okay.
Where is she?
But
Just
why?
call her.
Why didn't you like at least tell me you weren't going to be able to make it? Really, it really
Man.
put a
It
put a-
bummed me out.
it bummed me out. Let's say that. The right of return. You are for the right of return, Temperance?
Yes.
Who else is here for the right of return is good? Raise your hand or wiggle around.
Wait, right of return is
Palestinian?
good for who?
In general, we should support the Palestinian right of return. Yes,
Oh
I'm gonna half raise my hand.
pro.
Only half though.
I'm
Wait, wait,
waving
wait,
it.
This is why I need a more balanced panel. Gosh. Okay,
I'm not,
so
I'm
let
not
me
in
see
favor.
the
I'm not
right
in
of return.
favor of the law of return. I think it's the worst part about Israel.
What do we do?
I think it's the best
Right?
law about Israel because it allows people back to their
for
safe
the right of
space.
return.
It's the entire
Because,
fucking
To
point
be
of
clear,
Israel.
what the right of return is, let me explain it to you.
That's not the point of Israel.
Is Israel, right, allows Palestinians who either A, have been forced out of Palestine, Gaza, West Bank, wherever, for various reasons, or their previous generations had, right? So their grandma or their dad or their family or something. What it allows for is them to return to the territory and to return to their property. So my question becomes, for those of you who do support the right of return, you support that, you allow them back into their property, but the property has a Jewish family living in it who bought it fair and square, right? Who didn't kick anyone out for it. They were born there, right? Like, what happens to them?
Why
Are
does
they
a
living in,
why
like,
does
the
the current generation
settlements?
get to benefit from the evils of the previous generation? What right do they have
Why should
to
they be
inherit
punished for the
something that their
evils?
ancestors
Do
took
we
by
believe in
force?
collective punishment? Do we think
Yeah, this is
The-
original sin.
this
Wait,
Is that or is that not what is currently
Temperance-
happening to
I
the
think
Palestinians in
Temperance
Gaza right now?
does.
You
I think
can't
Temperance
judge.
believes in collective punishment because she did the self-hating white shit earlier.
You can't judge the current generation by the generation that came before it. Like if you do, you literally just have original sin, and you cannot stop before that goes.
It's not about punishing the current generation. It's saying, why does that generation have the right to own this stuff that they inherited? Why do they have the right to inherit ill-gotten
they were
gains?
born there?
We all
Because
live
they
on
inherit.
ill-gotten gains,
No,
though.
they literally
You're
they literally
American.
inherited it. Like inheritance is to a right, and I will absolutely defend that. Like you can take any fight you want with the shitheads who did it, but like once it starts passing down, you're in a whole different ethical ball game here and a moral ball game. I mean, I'm not gonna act like
I guess it's about the practicality of the right of return. It's like it's so hard to like locate.
True.
Okay, we have to go back, and then like if there's somebody who's like living there, then it's like how the heck are you gonna force them to like get out, or like the legal stuff that is like behind that as well, right? But like I don't know, it's like a complicated issue, right?
I think there's like a better argument for like reparations for like victims of like the Nakba than there is for like a full-on right of return for people back to like their property, because I don't think you can really do that. That's totally unfeasible. But maybe some sort of reparation thing. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't crunched the numbers on how much that would cost or who'd be paying it. But yeah, I think there's like a better argument for that.
A whole lot less than all those rockets they're throwing.
Probably
Those
something like
things
a
are what,
monetary
50,000 apiece?
reparations.
Yeah, like some sort of monetary reparations.
Yeah.
Or maybe it could be like maybe for this, if they were going to do like a one state but multinational state, they could have like, I don't know, we'll build these houses, or like we'll build these like new towns somewhere, and like we'll give people like an apartment or something. I'm just spitballing, but like I think that right of return is dead in the water, and it has been for decades.
Well, we're talking about like a hypothetical like right of return, because the right of return is that Jews get to go to Israel.
Yeah, we're talking about the Palestinian.
Yeah, there is no right.
The Palestinian, right? Yeah, I actually think that like if you can, I don't know. I think there's a strong argument that if you can prove that you have an individual who has a specific piece of property that was taken from them, then they should probably be able to get that back. Now, it becomes like I actually agree with Tiberius when we start talking about like the generations afterwards. Then it gets a lot more difficult, and I don't think it would follow then, right? Because if you can prove that you directly were hurt when somebody took your property, that's different than you digging back, finding like, oh, like 2 generations back this happened, so now I'm entitled to XYZ because you personally weren't the one that had it taken from you. So
interesting.
I may be simplifying it, but like the right of return for Palestinians, and if a Jewish family, Israeli family lives where they used to have a property, then if nothing can be done, give them a different property and give reparations for the land that they lost.
beachside property in Gaza. That's what would happen. Like realistically, like if we give them different property, they would just, if we go back to the Gaza open air thing, right? Like it would be it wouldn't be better. I don't know. It's one of the things about this whole situation, if you allow me to rant for a moment, is how complex it is and how many moving parts there is, and how each year and each decade that passes, it just gets more complex. No side is free of blood on their hands. Israel has plenty. Netanyahu specifically and the Likud specifically have rivers of blood on their hands. But the Hamas, the PLO, and the other the PIJ, other organizations such as that have equal or more amounts of blood as well. It's really hard for me. No?
I would say, like, especially when you're referring to, if you stretch it all the way back to the Nakba, like, I would say that, like, especially if you include like the Nakba and stuff, like it's probably more on the Israel side, but I think that's debatable.
The Necklin stuff?
The Nakba, yeah.
Oh, the Nakba. The Nakba. Okay, I know what the Nakba is. I don't know what the Necklin is. Okay.
So the Nakba was following the war that Israel got attacked by everybody. They like counterpushed, and a lot of people in modern day like border Israel, a lot of Arabs fled. They fled, or there's allegations of the Israelis pushed them out, and it was a lot of people. It was a decent chunk of people.
I'm going to put this
to take that a little bit further.
And there's a lot basically, and there's a lot of Israeli denial as well. Like especially on Israel's end. In fact, there was I think in 2011 there was such thing as like the Nakba law that was enacted, where they took I think state funding outside of organizations in order to like shut down any mention. Like it was like a free speech kind of law where they shut down mentions of anything around the Nakba or something like that.
Dude,
but hold on, let me pull up Let me pull this up. Like they took out like Nakba denial is like a real thing where they
no
one
is
it's monstrous. It's terrible.
Yeah, no one is saying that it wasn't monstrous and terrible.
And when you say that there's an equal or whatever the amount side this is
you have to ask if the Arabs have won,
Wick.
if Palestine had won, what would they have done? Because you can't stop it. What happened?
Obviously, I agree with you. No, Wick, I agree with you.
So
obviously,
why are you saying I'm
Palestine
minimizing things?
Would have no doubt. I have no doubt that Palestine would fucking genocide the Jews. Okay. Obviously. Okay.
So
I have no
I
doubt.
think it's okay to equate the two and measure the two. But I need to give Tiberius an out real quick, and then we can argue and yell at each other. Tiberius can have his out, and then we can yell at each other. I know that the Lactoid has to go as well.
Chaos reigns.
Yeah. So Tiberius, then Lactoid, and then we'll yell at each other for a minute. But go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me crash the panel. Do appreciate it. I actually don't support continuing funding Israel. My stipulation is they have to end the settlement program. Then we can reinstitute. If you want to keep it defensive to where it's like, hey, we'll give them Patriot for Iron Dome and CRAM and whatnot, I can maybe float that, but I'll also even give it to the Palestinians because I'm that much of a dick. Anyway, without further ado, my name's been Tiberius D. If you enjoyed whatever I have to have said today, feel free to come check me out. Tiberius D, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, all the things. I'm pretty much on all of them, but I don't always make content for all of them. Wick, great to see you. Please have me on more. We are to the point now where I can actually rejoin everything. Harvest is coming to a close. So yeah, feel free to throw out the invites.
We'll do.
And Lactoid, I'll see you on the next panel.
Okay.
I also enjoyed talking to you. So
yeah, pleasure.
Bye. Lactoid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my final thoughts are, ultimately, at the end of the day, colonization and civilization by Western powers, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it can be a good thing, and I hope Israel does do the good thing and make sure that this is really the last Gazan conflict that we have to worry about, and that and really bring in all the Gazans and make them Israeli citizens. I think that'd be a good idea. You can find me at WhickTV, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.
Thank you for being here. I'll check you out. Gang, just before we end this segment, right? I will say that on tomorrow we're going to have a Halloween costume panel. Everyone's going to be dressed up in costume, and they'll come out and it'll be fun. We'll do meme topics. It'll be a nice break from all this death and destruction. So tune in tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern for that. It'll be great. We got Stardust coming. We got Admiral Gibbs. We got Mooncake. We got all in costume. Fairy Queen will be here. It'll be great. Wednesday, I'm going to be talking to Aristocracy and Lonerbox about Hamas and its foundations and things like that. And then Thursday, we're going to have Counterpoints. We're going to have Brianna Wu. We're going to have Sock Done Left and a couple others. Karl Max will be there. We'll be talking about whether or not the progressives have an anti-Semitism problem. And we'll be digging into that. In a couple weeks, and this is a big one, gang, so after the 14th, I'm going to have No Opinion on. You guys know who that is? Huge Substack economics guy. Talks about the Israel-Gaza conflict as well. It's pretty good get. He's coming on my show. We're going to talk. So that'll be fun. So yeah, check us out. Okay, with that, if anyone has to go, they can go. If they want to stay, they can stay. We're opening this up. We can bring them in and we can talk. Yeah.
Wick.
We have a Palestinian at the back.
I know. I brought them in. Hello. Is this a troll guy? I don't know.
Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. You do realize I concede to like the points that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know why you're mad at me is the question.
Yeah, but also I feel like you don't really equalize like
what do you
also
mean?
on the Israel side, right? Like especially
Israel
when
was
they
founded in
spew
blood
a
and
power...
it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you say that enough? I don't really see you say that enough at all. Like you're having another talk about anti-Semitism. Like I see you talk about it on Twitter all the fucking time.
Because there are people, and the reason why I put much more emphasis on Hamas is because of the current state of things. Hamas is far worse than Israel, right? In the current state of play, Hamas is far worse. And
but I don't disagree with you.
And there are people who are defending Hamas, who are saying
Leftists.
Hamas
Yes,
is
of course,
West.
you're
good.
preaching to the choir here, Wick. You're preaching to the choir, okay? All right, but sometimes you need some pushback, okay? All right, and that pushback comes in the form of you also need to.
But I
recognize
see to all your
that
points.
what
Israel
Israel
bad,
is doing
Netanyahu
is
bad,
Pushback
Liquid's
comes in
bad.
but you don't
It's not a
elaborate.
conversation
You
because
elaborate
I
on it.
just
You
agree
don't
with you.
elaborate on the Nakba laws. You don't let me elaborate on the Nakba laws. You don't let me elaborate on what Netanyahu's cabinet is doing or what they're saying, right? On their irresponsible messaging,
Go ahead,
right?
because what
you don't
when
let
you're
them...
doing that, what you do in the like, if you just came in to talk about how Nakba, the Nakba laws were horrific,
Of course,
and
I
things
want
like that,
pushback
that's
from you,
fine.
Wick.
But
But
what you're doing
obviously-
is I start talking about Hamas, and then you say, "Well, what about Israel?" And that's substantively different. Does that make sense?
I'm not diminishing the suffering.
You may not
obviously,
intend
of
to be
Israeli
diminishing.
citizens. And I concede to your points. I'm not being like all Hassan Piker here. Does that make sense?
You again, I don't think you're intentionally doing it. That's true. I agree with that.
How is that? If anything,
Because,
I've been ranting nonstop
If
about
someone
how
came,
like
let me give you
people
an
have
example.
been
Let me give you an
diminishing
example.
the
If
suffering.
someone was having a stream, right, and they were talking about the suffering of the Gazan citizens under the bombardment, how 8,000, I believe, is the total now, maybe 9,000 innocent civilians, men, women, and children, have been bombed out of existence and things like that, and it was a horror, a tragedy, etc. If they were having a stream on that, I would never go in and say, well, what about all the bad things Hamas did, right? Like, why can't we talk about that? Why would I ever do that? You understand in the context of that conversation
Wick.
how
Because
that
it's
can
a
come
tangential
across
subject.
gross?
Do you know what a tangential subject is, Wick? Do you know what that is?
A subject that is a tangent to the actual subject
I
that we're having.
conceded to the empathy. I conceded to Hamas bad. I conceded to Hamas needs to be driven out as well. Okay? Can I just concede to all these points first?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So why not spend some time and spend literally an entire panel or segment just talking about how Israel is incredibly irresponsible and how you stir up terrorism sentiment among Hamas, and why the entire point why they got so popular was because, especially from the first Intifada, like Israel looks so fucking bad.
Okay.
Like during the first Intifada,
Because
and like
that-
what the fuck?
That
Wait, you think
flattens
that's
it.
terrorism within Hamas? That Israel looks bad?
Like,
Yeah, can you explain
my
what
God.
you mean there?
sorry, can you repeat the question? I just got a fucking
Do you
doorbell. I don't know
think
what
that
fuck
the
was.
fact Israel looks bad is what steered terrorism within Hamas? Because I don't think that's what you think. But
No,
that's
it's
kinda
because
what
of fucking Israel's action. Oh, sorry, let me answer this real quick.
Go get the door. But let me
Well-placed
say,
doorbell.
Israel could, because this is a canard, okay? This is a pernicious argument. It's a specious argument. And let me tell you why. Because even if Israel was saints, and they are not, to be clear, they have blood on their hands, as I keep, again, conceding to. But if they were saints, Hamas and 𝕵𝖎𝖎 and other such actors would continue to try and wipe them off the face of the earth, because it's not just the material conditions on the ground that are on play here, but it is the state-sponsored.
Bro, it's obviously because Israel literally did the fucking Nakba, drove the fucking Gazans.
That's what steered terrorism within Hamas?
They drove the fucking... What do you think happened? Yeah, after the first Intifada, Hamas was fucking founded. Right?
That's a whole
Did I
bunch.
get my facts wrong?
So Hamas originally in the 80s was a pretty good, actually,
Yes, they were
organization
good with the Israeli
with charities.
authority. Yes,
it did
they
a
were
lot of
good with the
charities and
Israeli
things
authority.
like that.
Yes,
and
I
there came
know.
a point
Yes,
where it
I know
flipped.
this. Yes.
It flipped.
Yeah.
Okay? It flipped. Okay? They are a state-sponsored. Do you know what a state-sponsored means in this case? So an outside state
I
sponsors
will admit,
them.
I don't know what caused them specifically to flip, but yes, they started to do terrorism.
So
Okay.
Iran, right? Regardless of how Israel treated the Palestinians, regardless of anything, at this date and time, right? Iran wants Israel gone. So they are funding literally millions of dollars. I think that the
Do you
yearly
think it's
annual
only
budget
because
that
of
they
Iran's
get from all
funding?
their
Do
outside
you
sources,
okay, hold on. Wait, I want to ask you
500
a question.
million or so,
Do you
350
really think
million,
it's because
something like that?
Iran's funding that like
Yes.
Hamas suddenly flipped? It's only
No,
because of money.
no, we're not
and,
talking
like,
about flipping. We're not talking about
greed-
flipping at this point. We're
greed
talking about
Hamas,
if
obviously because
Israel
of all the
stopped
public
today,
sentiment,
if
right?
Israel
It's only
laid
because
down
of
its
public
weapons,
sentiment.
stopped
Hamas
bombing,
took credit.
stopped
Hamas
doing
took
any of
credit
that,
for all
if
the
Israel
fucking,
stopped,
we did all the work.
do you think Hamas would stop? Yes or no?
Hamas would stop after what?
Israel stopped. Israel says we're not bombing. We're letting everyone go free. Right? We're ending the settlements. We're get every claim that that pro-Palestinians want. Right? Aside from the destruction and dissolution of Israel. Right?
Yes.
But do you think that Hamas would stop?
Extremism feeds on
do you think they
desperation.
would stop?
Extremism.
You gotta answer the question. Do you think Hamas would stop?
Feeds on desperation. Hamas would weaken. Hamas would weaken at the very
No.
least. Yes, I think that with the military right now, you need to drive Hamas out. Does that make sense? I already conceded to you at the very beginning.
Hamas kills,
what part of that
tortures,
don't you understand?
destroys, bombs, and kidnaps its Gaza Citizens, Palestinians all the time. In 2020, when a major Gazan...
I'll ask you a question. What part do we disagree on? What part do we disagree on?
You are saying that it's primarily...
What part do you think we disagree on?
Okay. So you do agree. So you do agree that Hamas wouldn't stop. That regardless of... No, stop. You gotta shut up. I'll shut you up.
We already agree at the very beginning.
We'll mute you, and that'll be fine. And I'll just talk, and you can listen. And then we'll be done. Okay? So, fair enough. I asked you, very simple question. Do you think if the material conditions improved overnight, drastically, they were given everything they wanted, would Hamas stop? Because that, and the reason I asked that, it goes to the core of this. The core of this, right? Are the material conditions and the way that Israel is treating Palestine, as horrific as it is, the reason that the 𝕵𝖎𝖎, Hamas, and other terrorist groups are attacking Israel? And I would posit to you, no, that is not. And while, yes, improving conditions on the ground might make them able to recruit less, you have to understand that Hamas currently runs Gaza. So at least in Gaza, they regularly steal, take, and keep their people under these conditions for the express purpose of maintaining power. And so you cannot fix this problem through humanitarian aid or getting Israel to stop. It is a necessary part of it to fix it in the long term, absolutely, but it is not enough. It is not enough. And so this is why your original question coming in, why don't I focus on Israel more, is because everyone else can do that. I'm going to focus on Hamas because people do not understand. There's a lot of my audience and audiences outside of my sphere that simply do not understand and refuse to recognize that Hamas and Iran and the 𝕵𝖎𝖎 and countless other groups such as them also need to be stopped. I will unmute you now and you can respond.
She was 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 you right now.
Okay. I understand, okay? I understand the threat that Hamas poses, okay? All right? But I'm just saying that extremism groups feed off of desperation, okay? If you treat Palestinians better, Hamas will still exist. However, they feed off of the desperation. The less desperation that the Palestinian people have, the less control that Hamas will have over the Palestinians, because their entire motto, their entire messaging goes off of, oh, you're hungry, you're poor, oh, let the hatred feed into you. That hatred, you have nothing left to lose, so become a suicide bomber. Go and throw yourself at the gates and blow up a few civilians, blow a few soldiers, kill and rape a few villagers, kill and rape a few Israeli citizens before you go off into the wind, okay? Yes, I admit that even though you can improve everything overnight, Hamas will not leave, okay? but you can reduce Hamas's influence to a very insignificant portion of the population. They can recruit less. They will be able to sway the population less. They will have volunteers far less. And even then, if they try to suppress the population via force, the civilian population will be able to resist the uprisings. They'll be able to resist Hamas more. They'll be more well-fed, and they will also like just be able to have more of a morale to be able to just resist Hamas in general. And here's the thing. And even then, if you want to take out Hamas at the end, hold on, let me finish, because I let you finish. Okay. So even if you take out Hamas at the end of the day, even if you have to invade to take out Hamas, it will be far, far easier than you have to do right now. And that means you have to talk about the Israeli government and the irresponsible shit that they are doing that makes the invasion so much harder today. Kaboom! Okay.
Actually, I agree with you, but that alone will not solve it. I'm sorry. That will not be enough.
This is the thing, and the reason why I'm talking
I think Temperance has her hand up.
Oh, shit.
Go ahead.
Temperance has had a hand up for ages.
So I have 2 thoughts swirling in my head. I want to get them out before I lose them.
Please.
The first one, I've actually been wondering this one for like weeks now, and I don't know the situation in Israel enough to know, like, be able to come up with a reason for it myself. So Gaza and West Bank are essentially 2 different territories in Israel.
Two different structures oversee them. The Fatah oversees the West Bank, and Hamas oversees Gaza. Yes,
but I'm saying is they're 2 different territories.
Yeah, one is literally the West Bank, and the other is Gaza Strip.
Right. It's just I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people don't seem to understand this, so I now make it a point to point that out.
Sure.
Is there a reason why, like, certain demographics in Gaza cannot be evacuated to the West Bank? Like, why can't children, elderly, infirm be transferred to the West Bank so they are no longer in the war zone?
Well, what happens is
Hamas,
I can answer this question, right? Is because Hamas says if you leave, you'll never get your lands back, so you should never go. Because again, I think that if they wanted to, right, if they asked to, this would be something that they might do, right?
Which, by the way, Hamas power would be weakened. They would be weakened if only you, like literally, if Netanyahu's government hadn't been so fucking incompetent and talked about security all this fucking time, all right? But yeah, keep on going, Wick. Yep.
Sure. Okay.
Which is why you have to
they would not.
talk about the Israeli
But
government.
you haven't demonstrated that. You haven't
Exactly.
demonstrated that. You keep asserting it, but if you had to demonstrate that, because what would have happened is Hamas would have just had more access. Because again, it's not just Likud, etc. Right? And we're talking about Gaza specifically here, not the West Bank. The West Bank's a totally different situation. In Gaza specifically, right? The Likud has the Netanyahu's government has like a blockade around it, right? But it's not just the blockade isn't just coming from Israel. It's coming from the Arab countries around Egypt,
Sure.
right? So even though we've pumped in millions of dollars of aid, right, to Gaza, if Hamas has only gotten stronger.
Yeah,
Why
it's
is
unmonitored.
The Israeli government is not helping. They're not helping.
Oh,
okay,
sure,
you have to talk about
but again,
everything. You have to talk about the entire
we
situation.
dump
You can't only talk about
billions-
Hamas. You're only talking about Hamas. Okay, that's the problem.
Because
okay?
Hamas is the main problem. Because Hamas is the main
You
problem.
have to talk about everything. Okay.
No, Hamas. Okay, Hamas
Are you
is
sure?
is
Are you
enemy
sure
number
they're
one.
the main problem.
Until
Don't you have to go
Hamas
all the way
goes
back?
away,
Are you sure you
nothing
don't have to
anyone
go
else
all the
can
way back as
do.
well?
Until Hamas
Don't
goes
you
away.
also have to talk about foreign policy in America as well?
If I want to make a call on this, the first step before I do anything else is I have to open up the fucking phone. Because you can talk about how you have to dial the numbers all you fucking want. Until that phone is open, you can do nothing. There
First
is
you have to
no
buy the
thing
phone,
that you
Wick.
can do to dial
Dummy.
this. In the same vein, until Hamas is gone, there is nothing. And I want to be clear, nothing. No amount of anything can be done that will solve this problem. You have to take it in an order of operations. And the first step to solving this problem is to get rid of Hamas. And others, not just Hamas, because there's a PIJ and there's others. And you also have to stop or find a way to lessen the effect of state sponsors in the region who are like Qatar, like Iran, who are funneling money into these groups. So until you solve that problem, There is nothing else that can be done that will solve the problem. Now, that doesn't mean I'm against humanitarian aid to Gaza. I think it's absolutely necessary. We need to, for example, turn back on the food, the water, electricity, etc. We need to open humanitarian corridors. We need
to monitor where the aid is getting.
But until Hamas is gone, that's not going to solve the problem, because you saw what happened with the UNRWA. Their aid station got fucking robbed by Hamas. Hamas just fucking took it.
Brother,
right? And that happens with most of the, not most, but a good portion of the aid that goes into Gaza. Hamas's government doesn't let the people have it. They take that shit.
Brother, you're waffling, my brother.
Why is that?
Okay. Brother. Okay, Wick, listen. Do we even disagree?
Apparently, yes, because you keep woke scolding me for criticizing Hamas more than I do Israel.
Tell me.
I am woke scolding you every single time you're preaching to the choir. Vivian won't even come on to come and argue with you.
We should
both agree.
One another.
Yeah.
Like, what do you substantially disagree on? Fuck all.
Again, food stamps is woke scolding me because I don't talk about Israel.
Yes, sometimes a little bit of woke scolding is good.
No,
okay?
it's not.
Or a little tiny bit.
Not in this case.
Not in this case, yeah. Virtue signaling.
What do you mean virtue signaling?
If
being against Hamas is virtue signaling, I guess I'm a virtue signal. I guess it's true.
What the heck? We don't even disagree that Hamas is bad. What the fuck? And they have to go.
So again, what
point
point are you
disagree
even
on that
making?
either.
What are you actually
terrible.
adding to this discussion then?
That I think that you should talk about how bad Netanyahu's government is more.
Bad?
I think
Likud
your
is
tweets,
bad? How they
your
prosecuted
tweets about
the war
how
is
specifically.
bad? I agree.
No, you should talk about the
Fuck
specific
Netanyahu,
things
get him
that
out.
they
Yeah,
do.
Bibi needs to go. Bibi needs to go.
Okay,
He's lost support of
See, that's a start. That's a start.
Get him the fuck out. Let's just say this for a
But I've said all this.
Talk
I agree
about-
with you. There is nothing to talk about. I agree
How
with
is
you.
there
Yep,
nothing
see
to
it
talk
all
about?
immediately,
How
without
could you say
conditions,
that
without
there's
corrections.
nothing to talk
Yep.
about?
So again, like, what are you doing?
Monokuro, say something. You're
What are you
Israeli.
adding to this
What
conversation?
do you want me to say? I'm with Wick. I agree with you. Netanyahu should get the fuck out.
Yeah, like, what do you want us to
Palestinian
say
lives
beside
matter,
that? No
but
one disagrees.
I'm sorry, what else
There's
do
no
I say?
discussion to be had. No one disagrees.
Then why are you shouting?
Because she keeps
I
on
feed on
trying
chaos,
to
that's why I'm shouting.
gen up this astroturfed outrage that somehow I'm not saying this, or I'm trying to run cover for this, when that's just demonstrably not true.
Is that you're not talking about this one thing enough, and you're just preaching to the choir. That's where the disagreement is, right?
That you think I'm not talking about enough, but I do talk about enough, because what else is there to talk about? Bibi has to go. Boom. We've talked
Fuck
about
him.
that. We've discussed it. It's bad.
Get him out.
Yeah.
And then you're saying, oh, there's none else to talk
Does
about.
anyone
and,
disagree
like,
with
end
that?
up
Also,
being on
Ben-Gvir.
Hamas.
Get Ben-Gvir the
You
fuck
think
anyone
away.
here-
Get him to
Does
prison.
anyone here
Also,
disagree with
Smotrich.
that? If there's someone who
Also,
disagrees with that, we can talk about it.
Happened, I guess the Nakba happened. Oh, I guess everything.
no one
happened in
disagrees that
history
that was
I
and
think
bad.
you should
everything
take the
about that
Likud, the
happened.
entire Likud
Yeah,
party, and put them in
guess
prison.
all
How's
the
that?
bad thing happened, but I guess the
But no
main
one's
thing is Hamas, and
disagreeing
that's
with
it.
that.
Like, what the heck?
No one's disagreeing with that. So again, what conversation? Again,
You're
given
just
that
saying
this
he
is debate
doesn't talk
space,
about it enough.
why
but
are
you're
we going
preaching
to
the choir
debate something
anyway? So why
that
not
no
preach
one
to the
disagrees
choir
on?
on both ways anyway? Because you're preaching to the choir anyway. Anyway,
No, we're not.
Okay,
Because the
yeah.
whole original topic of this panel was whether or not the U.S. should continue to fund militarily Israel. There was substantive disagreement on that. We had something to talk about. But when you say, "Oh, are we going to debate if the Nakba is bad?"
Are you okay?
No one here,
Wait.
and no one at least that I know of in my community, thinks that the
Wait.
Nakba wasn't bad. So what are we going to do? Sit here with our dicks in our hands and just...
You're already doing that. You're asking for Vivian and etc. to come on because you weren't getting enough
Because
opposition.
non-smokers...
You were
There's
talking
a
about Native
Palestinian
American
lead.
tribes. You were talking about Native American tribes. And when I came on and
Palestinian.
established my position, you were like, oh, come on. Food stamps. What the fuck?
Yeah, I food stamps, I
You won't
really
even
do,
say my
and
name
I think they're
correctly
just
to
trying to
this day.
astroturf this. And it's weird that you're
Oh,
trying
this
to-
is like an ongoing thing. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. Well, I honestly don't know. I think she's just trying to drum up content at this point. But
Anyway,
I mean, I'm enjoying it.
Temperance, please. Yeah. Temperance, we can't hear you. You cut out. Go ahead.
can I take us on a little bit of a tangent here?
Please.
Please.
All right. So from your argument, you're like, well, we can't make things better for the Palestinians in Gaza because Hamas is in there and Hamas is bad.
We can't solve the problem, no. Can we make it better? We can, and we are, right? We can give them food, we can give them water, we can give them electricity. I advocate for all that. I think we should turn that on. That is something I advocate for, yes. I think also the UNRWA has provided some education, which is a good thing. I don't think it's helped, though.
No, is what is from what you were saying is like, okay, you have them there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're basically saying that, well, the Palestinians cannot be allowed to be integrated into Israel because Hamas is there and Hamas is bad, and we can't.
Well, they don't want to be integrated into Israel.
Even just giving them the option.
They don't have the option because Hamas is there.
Option, and yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying.
Like Hamas is the government. Is the government, right? But Hamas is the current government. And, like, who else are we supposed to deal with when it comes to Gaza, specifically, other than Hamas, if Hamas is the current government? They can't hold elections.
You disavow the government. You basically treat the Palestinians living in Gaza.
But then who? If not Hamas, right? Then who?
No one. You just start treating with each Palestinian individually as if they're refugees that have no government.
I mean, that's how we got into this situation in the first place, is because they were refugees from both the 1948 war and the 1967 war, and they were put into refugee camps, basically.
Is that they were taken and they've essentially been held prisoner for 40, 50 years.
That's just creating generations of more refugees. You're not making it better.
Wouldn't this problem be partly solved? Excuse me. If the West Bank if they had elections the first since 2006, you had multi-party democratic elections in the West Bank and Gaza, and you allowed all the if you allowed the displaced Palestinians who are currently living in Israel, in East Jerusalem, to vote, and then we could finally cut the bullshit on the whole Gaza is Hamas or Palestine is Hamas. If they did a United Nations, basically just clamp down on it. Wouldn't that make would that solve the problem, do you think?
Make it better, maybe.
Yeah.
Nothing will solve it.
Solve it, but...
I think it's weird that, people consider Hamas the governing organization of Gaza and also a terrorist organization at the same time. How are those two things even able to legally exist together?
They are.
It's not legal. It just happens.
I don't know if I would consider them terrorist is such a weird word. This is the best way I've heard put, that Hamas, the 𝕵𝖎𝖎, other such things, they're state-sponsored ISIS-like organizations. How's that? Instead of calling terrorist is just a shorthand for that, right? But
do you mean an Islamic extremist organization when you say ISIS-like?
ISIS-like, yes, they are.
What I'm saying is people are they're saying that they are the governing body of Gaza.
They were elected in 2006, yes.
Election in 16 years.
So, because Hamas hasn't allowed an election in 16 years.
And Israel has also been kind of blockading that with the East Jerusalem Arabs or Palestinians. That was one of the big issues.
East Jerusalem, I'm specifically looking at Gaza here. We can talk about the other areas. Sure. That changes the discussion, right? The West Bank is a substantively different discussion than Gaza, right? There's different factors.
I generally don't know, so I'm asking, maybe Mono knows, but do the West Bank Palestinians and the Gaza Palestinians, do they see themselves as a distinct group, or do they see themselves as one national thing?
I think that the Palestinians in the West Bank, they can't. The Palestinians in Gaza are just living in such a different situation. I mean, they're both Palestinians, but you can't compare them socioeconomically.
As far as I know, Fatah kind of hates Hamas and vice versa, right?
Oh, they were at war for a year. 2007.
And I mean, when Hamas got elected, the first thing they do is gave the opposition party flying lessons, right? They literally threw them off roofs.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. They are living when we look at Nazi Germany, that's kind of the government that is in charge of Gaza right now. is they are doing like all the degradation that has
If the Nazis were successful, it would look
that you can think of, Hamas is doing to its own citizens, right? They are torturing, killing, raping, kidnapping, holding, coercing, all that is happening. Everything they did on October 7th, they first practiced on their own people, right? This is what we're dealing with here when it comes to Gaza and Hamas, right?
Which is kind of what I'm saying is like I say, is on one hand, people are trying to give Hamas like this legitimacy that, well, this is the group we have to negotiate with, while at the same time they are also a terrorist organizations that are tormenting not only everybody else but also their own. They're literally holding everyone in Gaza who is not part of Hamas hostage.
Which is why I'm not sure I'm okay with the ceasefire, because A, I don't think Hamas would honor it, and B, I don't think they negotiate good faith, right? They just never will.
After their success on the 7th, they won't stop. Definitely not.
Say one more time.
After Hamas's success on the 7th of October, they're not going to stop. It's a precedent for them.
Yeah, it's just like I've talked to Israeli lefties, right? Like lefties who's called for ceasefires in every other conflict. Like even them are just like, well, it hasn't worked. It's never worked. We've never been able to solve it through this.
I have a question. So let's just say that now they occupy the land of Gaza. Do you think that they will let
by they you mean Israel?
Israel, yeah. Will they let the Gazans back in?
Probably not, and that's a horror in and of itself.
Yeah.
Not the Likud, absolutely.
Yeah, the Likud, like the current government in Israel? No way. Which is a problem, right?
Dude, they passed a law that the police can shoot protesters. We're not getting to wherever we want to go.
Indeed. The bright light, the silver lining though, is that at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mono, but the polling I've seen coming out of Israel is Netanyahu and his ilk have lost so much support. They're bleeding support. And
even the rightoids.
Yeah.
Even the most extremist, almost the most extremist rightoids.
And so there is a very real possibility that Bibi is like that, the Likud's hold on Israel is going to go away through very peaceful means. Like we won't have to do anything. They'll just, again, they'll go away. They'll be because Israel is a democracy, right? They will be voted out. And gang, you can beat fascism through voting. That happens.
Based.
Dude, that's the most annoying thing that this happened right at the all of the protests here.
Yes.
Insane protests. We've never seen anything like this, in my opinion. Against the Likud and the
Absolutely. It's absolutely a thing. However, right? So I think that problem's getting solved. I hope it is, right? And we'll keep tabs on that. But the Hamas problem, you can't the Gazans aren't in the same position. They cannot just vote Hamas out. They cannot rise up against Hamas. Right? They aren't in a position to do that, nor can we realistically get them in a position to do that in any reasonable time frame. And I don't know if it's fair to ask Israel to suffer having a political entity on their borders who wants to genocide them and has demonstrated that if they get the chance, they absolutely will kill thousands of men, women, and children, right? Like
torture.
Yes, I don't think
why does Israel have the right to do the same?
Israel doesn't have the right.
We are not doing
the same.
They've killed 9,000 8,000 people in the last 3 weeks.
Are you aware what happened on the 7th?
Yeah, they killed Hamas killed 1,500.
You're talking
Israel
numbers. Are you aware of exactly what happened?
10,000.
Are you aware of what happened in the country on the 7th? Not the numbers. Of course, Israel is stronger. The numbers will be skewed towards we're winning, of course.
whether somebody kills somebody with a knife or whether somebody blows somebody up with a bomb, those people are just as dead.
So in World War II,
What about beheading?
no, just let me ask this.
raping,
Let me try this.
Shooting
Let me-
babies in the
stop,
head.
stop,
Is
stop,
that
Mono.
like not a difference?
Mono.
And no Palestinian babies have died.
Give me,
They died, not
give
in
me
the
a
same
difference.
way.
Like here's
It
the
doesn't
difference.
matter.
Let me try.
Matters
So,
a lot.
Two things. One, we killed at a 10-to-1 ratio, many more Japanese than we lost American citizens and American soldiers specifically in World War II. Were we the bad guys in World War II?
In some ways, yes.
Damn.
Well, I fundamentally disagree. But
That's
second question.
the dumbest fucking thing anyone's ever said in this.
Okay. Second.
I don't remember hearing about like a squad of Israeli soldiers going house to house, shooting babies, raping women, beheading them. This matters. The intention matters. The way in which you do things matter. I'm sorry.
Throwing bombs at people, not caring if they live or die.
I care.
Sorry,
I'm not
I don't
the Israeli
see the
government. This
distinction
is
between
fucked.
stabbing
But
somebody
this is
with a
not the
knife or
same
just
as
dropping a
Hamas.
bomb on
This
them.
is not comparable.
Killing a baby is killing a baby, regardless of the
comparable,
method
sorry.
in which it is done.
I disagree.
Because in one case, the difference here is Hamas struck military targets during October 7th in order to get to their real target, which it was the civilians. They only attacked the military in order to keep them from preventing them from getting to the ooey gooey center of the civilians in Jerusalem, and not Jerusalem, but in Israel, right? The difference here and I still think this is bad, to be clear. I think it's evil, to be clear. But there is a substantive difference. Is Israel, in order to get at their target, which is Hamas, does not take enough care to prevent civilian casualties and deaths and killings as well. And so there is no moral equivalence between these two actors. One is specifically targeting civilians, and the other is simply not doing enough to stop civilians from dying. There is there is a gulf, a chasm of moral difference between these two positions.
Absolutely.
Do not say dead civilians are dead civilians. This is very different.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off for now. Thank you for the opportunity
Peace
to
out.
jump on. All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
No problem. All right.
Yeah.
See ya. Bye bye.
See ya.
Yeah. And like again, Crawl the Wall in my chat is saying Hamas is not the target, the people are.
No.
That's
No.
not
Come,
true.
please, come, talk to us, please. Talk to me.
Crawl the Wall,
me.
jump in. Come talk to us.
Jesus Christ.
What about anyone our Palestinian friend here in the call?
I'm so
I
sorry.
don't know if this is a meme. Like, you're muted, Palestinian friend. I think someone just made a dummy account.
I think he's
could be
been
wrong.
talking really
Oh, he just
a lot
wanted
of sense this whole
to
time.
balance the numbers.
God bless.
Could be wrong.
I'm really starting to think that's not even a real person.
I don't think it's a real
No.
person,
No,
obviously.
It might be a
but,
real
but,
person having the time of his life behind.
Yeah,
the-
who
the
knows?
screen.
I don't know. But
No.
here's the thing, right? Like, if Israel wanted to just kill Gazans, it's doing a piss poor job at it.
Mhm.
Look at the
Yeah.
number of bombs.
Israel is capable of so much more violence than is being displayed, and that's not a threat because I don't want them to even commit the violence that
Yeah.
Israel is doing right now. But it's a fact.
Yeah, like Israel could turn Gaza into a fucking car park and like overnight if they wanted to.
It would be a car park. If that's what their goal was, it would be that.
Yeah, like if that's what they really wanted to do, they would just do it, and they would have done it several times over already. Like there's clearly it's not their intention.
Now, again,
So
I
to
would-
me, that's
I would argue, and I'll let you go in a second, Temperance, but I would argue that they are absolutely culpable because they are not doing enough to prevent civilian casualties.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with that. And what they are doing is gross. It is immoral. It is wrong.
It's war
That
crimes.
said, they're not. No, I just don't see. Yeah, I don't see them. Again, if they wanted to, they
Until-
would.
Listen, until Israeli IDF squads are being ordered to go into houses and kill people, shoot them in the head, rape them, behead them, not even behead them, you know what, that's very specific to Muslim like terrorists, but like shoot them in the head, nothing else. Just like maim the bodies, make fun of them, film themselves doing this, put like cameras on their vests. Until such a thing happens, you can't compare the intentionality. It's just not comparable.
that's putting like levels of atrociousness on horrific events, though. That's the same people who say, well, this isn't a genocide because it's not as bad as the Holocaust, just because the Holocaust was like the pinnacle of genocide.
Definitionally,
other lesser
what's happening in
genocides
Gaza is not
aren't
a genocide.
genocide
It's horrible,
because
but it's not a genocide.
I actually I really don't consider it a genocide because it's an ethnic cleansing, but I don't consider it a genocide.
Okay.
But I'm saying is that there are legitimate genocides that get called not genocides just because they're not as bad as they could be.
We're not talking about that though.
What I'm saying is it's the same concept though. Is it's saying that one level is that because there is one level is bad is worse than another level of as bad that
We're
somehow
just
this level
comparing
is
one
bad
thing that's
isn't bad.
happening. We're comparing one thing that's happening to another thing that's happening, and they're different. That's all. That's it. Of course,
It's like
hypothetically, you can make.
semantic
Let me try this.
No, it's
example.
happening.
Let me try this example. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
You have a car company, okay? And because they want to cut costs, they want to cut corners, they just want more money. They're just greedy, okay? They in their design of their car, they use cheap products, they purposely skimp on safety measures, and as a result of this negligence and purposeful fraudulent behavior, car accident deaths skyrocket, okay? You have 1,000 dead children because of that. That's horrific, right? That's something we would hold them accountable to. We would say they are culpable for, they are responsible for, etc. But there is a substantive difference between that and a group who is planting bombs in cars and blowing them up because they want to see the inhabitants of those cars die. There is, again, both are bad, but one is infinitely worse. I don't know how this isn't getting through.
And I mean, I'm not even saying that there isn't a difference, but one thing being worse does not make the other thing not bad. And that's
Sure,
I'm
I
seeing
agree. They're
just
both
a lot
bad.
of
How much
people
do we
saying
need to
that
call it out?
that
How
Israel
much?
bombing isn't bad because what Hamas did was so much worse.
It's bad as a war crime,
that
but how
bothers
much
me.
do we need to call it out for it to go through?
I mean, I'm not even saying necessarily on this panel. I'm just saying that like a lot of things I've been seeing as general is you just got a lot of people out there who are like, well, what Hamas did was so much worse, so what Israel did isn't bad.
No, who are you talking to? I don't know. What Israel is doing
I mean,
is
it's
bad.
Twitter.
What
it's
Hamas
Twitter.
did on the 7th is incomparable. Uncomparable. I'm sorry, English is bad.
Okay. Well, I think we are kind of winding down. I do have to get ready for tomorrow's show. Costume panel, everyone. Tomorrow's a lot lighter of a subject. Gang, if you like this content, if you enjoyed watching me today, if you enjoyed being on today, if you want to be donating as a participant, super chats are the way to go. Like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Twitch or on Kick, hit that follow button. Throw some subs my way. Throw some bits my way. That's how we fund this channel. That's how we keep ourselves going. I want to thank each and every one of my guests and my caller-inners for calling in. I appreciate the discussion. And yeah, for now, though, we're going to raid out into Prime Kai. So, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. See ya.
Bye. Oh, this takes a while to process, but we'll get there. Okay,
like
here
the
we go.
peace
And thank you for the
process.
$2, Cryboard. Bye! Okay.
Can folk even hear me?